Call the meeting to order. Those at the HQ, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of agenda. Commissioner Kenny.
I'd like to add an item to the agenda, an executive session, maybe 14B, for an executive session for review the performance of a public employee, the fire chief pursuant to RCW 4230-110-1G for 20 minutes. Is that okay?
Yeah, you wanted after adjournment or before?
Well, not after adjournment.
Right, when you said 14B, so that's why I was.
Oh, sorry. So maybe 13A or 13B.
How about right after commissioner comments? Does that sound fair?
Sure, that sounds good.
Okay, I didn't think so after adjournment either, but I just wanted to make sure I heard you correctly.
No, that wouldn't do much good.
All right, so there has been an amendment to the agenda tonight.
So I'll move the agenda with that change.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
I second.
Seconded by Commissioner Chan. Any further discussion? None appearing. All those in favor of the adjusted agenda, say aye.
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 All those opposed, say nay. All right. Commissioner Lawrence, did you wish to make a comment? Okay. No, okay. We will go on to the consent agenda for payroll summary and authorization for September 2023 and claim voucher totaling $964,529.48. The chair would like to entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second? Second.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Chan. Any discussion? None appearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. All right. Approval of meeting minutes for September 5th, 2023 regular meeting and September 12th, 2023 work session. Chair would like to entertain a motion to approve.
I move to approve the minutes.
Commissioner Chan moves to approve. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Lawrence. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. On to public comment. I didn't see any names on the list here at HQ. Is there anybody online? If so, please raise your hand. All right, not seeing any. On to the fire chief's report with Chief Eastman.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners, public. This will be a fairly brief report. We start with the first slide. I've got a couple slides and then I've got a couple other things to discuss. One of the events that happened on the 21st of September, we did a Marine firefighter drill. I'll let you read the bullet points. The important thing to know is it was a multi-jurisdictional, include the U.S. Coast Guard, us, and then several other regional departments and the DoD. And it was off the Seattle waterfront. I got a small brief from Chief Chalfant, and it was a huge success. And this is kind of a carry-on. I believe they did another drill like this similar last year. I don't know the details of that one. We had a battalion chief, 4 personnel that were on Marine 16, an engine, and 2 aid cars that were there. And the other thing I'll say is that this was a grant-funded exercise. So we received reimbursement for everybody that participated in the event. We don't have a lot of opportunity to do this jurisdictional training, specifically when you add DoD components. We do some training with the Coast Guard, but obviously with the DoD assets that are in the region, this was a unique opportunity, and it was specific to a fire that happened in San Diego back in 2020, and it's kind of what generated the training. And so wanted to let you know that happened, and great success and a great training opportunity for those from the Marine unit. And it had some not just water, but some dockside training associated with that too, which we incorporated folks that may not be marine operators, but engines and aid cars that actually have a realistic opportunity to do that work too. That's not normal for us. And so wanted to direct your attention to that. And the next few slides, I'm going to turn over to Leslie.
Good evening, commissioners and liaison. First off, we provided ACT first aid and CPR training for the city of Linwood staff. We trained about 50 staff members, and 2 weeks earlier, we trained all the Linwood police officers. And that's something we've done with our other cities we serve too, with staff in the other cities. The next slide. We had 19 community members graduate from our community emergency response team training held over the weekend. This was a 3-day training. It actually started on Friday, and it covered a wide range of topics related to disasters, including the most common disasters we have in our region, disaster medical operations and triage, disaster psychology, fire and utility safety, light search and rescue, and the students capped off the weekend with a hands-on skills test held here at headquarters. So we're excited about that. And then this weekend, I want to remind you all that we're going to be having our Fire Prevention Week open house on Saturday at Martha Lake Fire Station 21 from 11 to 1. And we have lots of fun things planned, and hope you can attend.
Thank you, Leslie. 2 additional things for those, the Washington Survey and Rating Bureau. It's hard to believe that 5 years ago, we got our rating as the newly created RFA, and our 5-year time is up, and we will be on the docket for 2024 to be re-rated. There'll be more to come on that. And what that is, it's what they call, the community or protection class rating. There's some verbiage that comes and goes, but a lot of folks have been in the fire service a long time. It's kind of like the equivalent of the ISO rating. And we're currently a 3 in the RFA. And I don't see us changing significantly. It's a big climb to get to number 2. I'm still working with staff. We get between January 1 and October of 24 to schedule and do the work with the team down there. And I think our team's shooting. I think the folks I've been talking to that will take the lead on our behalf are looking at March, April, and kind of keep it out of the summer season and keep it out of the budget and some of the things that happen at the end of the year. So more to come on that, but that's typically a 5-year cycle for us. And I think when they're done with the report, they usually do a briefing. I don't recall if we did it formally at a board meeting or we just had a meeting and let everybody know when we're getting the brief and open it up to board members to come. More to come on that. But that's a little bit of work that's required by staff to provide the information they need that they work through. So the last thing is, if you recall, late, or I guess 2-3 months ago, we put in for the integrated planning grant. And if you go back when we started talking about Value Village, we put in for that grant. It was the first grant we put in when we started down the road after the first phase or the first environmental study we did. And they ran out of money and weren't able to fund our program. Well, I got a letter today that basically they liked our program, and not only that, but they funded it. So now we have some things going on with the purchase sale agreement with Value Village. So there's some additional conversations that need to happen. And I know they have a environmental consultant that's reviewing the work that we had done with the group or the firm that did the environmental work. And so I'm not exactly sure. They said they get back to us no later than the 22nd of December. I'll reach out to their executive director, because now we have to start some formal conversations with ecology in the next couple weeks. And if Verdon doesn't move forward with the purchase and sale, then obviously this grant goes away because it's tied to that property. And what it would fund is the third phase, which is the rest of the exploratory for us that needed to be done to do the rest of the work that we talked about earlier. And then there is a little bit of seed money to look at some project work to determine, we've talked about potentially putting a multi-story building on that site. What would that look like? Is it big enough? And some of those things, there's a little bit of dollars in this grant that would be left available for us to explore that and see if there's even a feasibility as part of this third phase to see if, we get a really good idea if some of the things we've talked about outside the box, multi-story building, or some of those things is doable or not, which will help change the conversation, I think, or streamline the conversation if they find out it's not. So good news. More to come on that, though, as a result of waiting for a response back from Verdant on that property. So with that, that concludes the chief's report, unless you guys have any questions.
Thank you, Chief Eastman. Any questions? Mr. Kenny?
Yes, Chief Eastman, the last grant there, that was how much and by what agency?
So it's through Department of Ecology, and I believe it's up to 200,000. And I don't have, it doesn't give me the dollar amount that was approved, but if I remember right, when we put in for it, it was a $200,000 grant. It doesn't say that, so I need to go verify that, but it's from Ecology. It's part of dollars set aside from the Washington State budget process.
And when would the third phase be ready to, or maybe ready to implement?
So the first part of this is we reach out to them and then start talking about what a scope of work would look like. The good thing is Allie, who's the lead from Ecology, is the one that's worked with us through our whole project. And she, we had 2 meetings with her prior to submission of this. So she's well aware of our project. And so I don't know the timelines on it. I actually didn't expect to get this information until after the first of the year. So I'm a little bit shocked that we got it this soon. And so we start talking about the project scope of work, and then the rest of the questions you're asking will all be ferreted out from there. And I'll have to come back and give you the rest of the story, so to speak. And some of this, I sent this to Lisa Edwards, the executive director of Verdant, to let her know we actually received this because it was specific to third phase and deals with the person sale agreement. And I got a response back that she let the board know. I need to give a conversation and let her know some of the detail of this and get an inkling of where they're at. Because quite frankly, if they don't want to move forward in it and are going to do something different, the sooner we know that in this instance, the better, because somebody didn't get funded that could use the dollars if for some reason it doesn't move forward. I will tell you, though, they're still working and doing their due diligence, and the conversation's still happening. They're just, once again, they're doing their due diligence as a result of the work we've done, I think, to help inform them of, what we asked for in the purchase and sale agreement. And they're doing their due diligence, which I would expect them to do. So.
Great, thank you.
Anyone else? I know that last year, President Moore and I had the opportunity to tour the vessel Leshai there at the Seattle Fire Department. And so that was quite the nice vessel. I don't know if we're gonna be able to get one of those, but thank you, Chief Eastman, for the report. On to legal report with Mr. Attorney Richard Davis.
Good evening, Commissioners and Liaison. This will be a brief report tonight. Just briefly summarize kind of things we've done from a high level over the course of the last month. We've started work on some of the revisions to the RFA's public works policies. I mentioned a few meetings ago, there were some quite a few legislative changes this past session. We're putting those revisions into the policies. We'll work with staff to finalize those, and then we'll be in a position to bring this back to the commission. We've worked on some purchasing issues, provided some advice there. We've dealt with the City of Edmonds annexation issue that's on the agenda later this evening. Worked on some personnel matters and have provided some advice. I'm sorry, review and revisions to contracts, both interlocals and third-party vendor agreements. The only other thing I wanted to mention is the WFCA conference at the end of the month. Those of you, I know that a number of you will be attending. There is on the agenda at 1:30 a legal committee meeting, and it goes by the term legal committee, but anybody is welcome to attend. And if any of you wanted to attend, feel free to do so. That's a meeting that really was set up many years ago for lawyers who represent the fire service to get together and talk about emerging issues. And so we'll have a number of different topics discussed that are of interest to lawyers that represent fire departments, and you might find some of them interesting. So feel free to attend if you're there that early on Wednesday. And that's all I have for tonight.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, thank you for the report.
Thank you.
On to union report with Matt Armstrong.
Good evening, staff. Good evening, commissioners and liaison. I don't have anything really to report tonight, so it's gonna be a short one for me. But like the last time I was here, I'll just give thanks to everyone for their hard work. And thanks to you guys for doing what you do, and thanks to our crews who are performing at a very high level out on the streets at the increased call volume and whatnot. So very proud to be part of this organization. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. On to unfinished business, the contract for engineering and architect for Station 22 for action with Assistant Chief Eastman and TCA Principal Brian Harris.
So good evening again. So we have Brian Harris here with us tonight. And Richard Davis, our legal counsel, is also on to hopefully answer the questions that the board has. And then for the board to consider the contract that's before you with TCA. I asked Brian to come and what I'm going to turn it over to him. And I think one of the themes of the last couple of meetings on this is what is actually the process. And so you know, if we do sign the agreement, what does the process look like? And there's a checks and balance in it and those kind of pieces. And so what I'm going to ask Brian to do is just go over what the process is, or what the process for agencies like ours. Some of the process that he's talking about is very, very similar to what we did when we did our buildings of 21, 12, and 10 and the rest. But I thought it was important because I think we had some questions about, you know, when do we know about the cost, and is there checks and balance with the cost and all those pieces? And there are. And I guess I'll apologize again. This is information and a process that I'm not as familiar with. And probably should have had Brian here 2 meetings ago to have this, or I'll actually had a little bit more detail to you. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Brian for him just to go over what the process is, or what the normal process is for agencies of our size, like what Seattle does, what Puget Sound does, Valley, Renton, Central Pierce, agencies, large agencies, and how does this work? And then turn it over for questions for you guys to ask and get some of the detailed questions that you want from the expert. And then when we're done with that, then for specific contractual questions, Richard's here and can answer those if there are any. When Brian's done, if that's okay, I'll turn it over to Brian. And Brian, thanks for being here. And I'll give you the mic.
Okay.
Actually, before we started, because the process though, I was here, you wasn't, I mean, maybe you were not involved. I remember our process, how we gone through. So is that, I mean, I'm not sure there's a one standard way to do it. I think
Well,
I remember when,
I- I-
my process is a bit different. from
so
what you
I,
were
so I
presenting.
can say
Yeah.
that in the conversations Brian and I have had on this topic,
Right,
the process that's normally done in the fire service is what he's going to present to you. Right. And like I said, I wasn't intimately involved when we
Right.
did the station building before.
Yeah.
But in my conversation with Brian, the process is very similar. Outside the fact that the original contract that we did with Brian laid out each station that was being done. And then through that process, he brought back cost estimates and all those other pieces. In this case, we chose to do it a little bit different. We're doing the contract for Station 22. And then if and when we get to the next one, if we do one with the next 5 years, we'll bring the contract forward again. Although we've agreed that's the contract, and we'll sign that, approve that same one for whatever station or whatever building we do next. So that's the nuance.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, I think there's, I mean, I think there's always options. What I've asked Brian to do is based on how we went forward, and of comparable agencies, what is a normal standard that we do in this state? And Brian has done this for agencies that, Puget Sound, Central Pierce, Seattle, they're all large agencies
I
of our
have no
size.
question. Brian
Um,
went to the best architecture school.
So, yeah,
It-
so what I'll do is I'll let him just go through
Right.
what the process, and then we can continue to answer questions, Commissioner Chan, and let the conversation go there where it goes.
He went to the best architecture school, University of Oregon. So I have probably no questions on that. Right, Jim?
Well, no comment.
I know better than that.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. So what we have is a contract that was developed by RFA's council, and it's specific for a project, say Station 22. It allows for future projects to be added, or essentially new contracts, but it would use that same framework. The way this typically works, and like Chief Eastman had mentioned, we've done this with Valley Regional, Puget Sound Regional, East Side Fire, City of Renton RFA now. And the process, because there's a lot of work that needs to be done to confirm what these budgets are, to verify what the process is, it would be a two-stage kind of fee, essentially, where start out, you tune up the project, you put together a detailed program. We work collectively with the RFA to identify those sub-consultants, engineers, if it's geotech, surveying, there could be a traffic engineer, an environmental consultant, based on what the criteria is for that jurisdiction. We look at that, we put these consultants together, we develop a fee, and from that, we would do a conceptual estimate, for the project. We had looked at this with capital facility plan, a few years ago that was approved, and identified this is where we're at. So this would give us a snapshot based on everyone's current understanding, and collectively we would review that and say, okay, this is the budget moving forward. You're in control of that budget. You're in control of what goes in the facility. And then after that's done, you say, okay, well, this is on target for a maximum allowable construction cost. We would then prepare a fee. Most firms use the state fee guidelines. It's just through the state, and it's based on percentage costs, and then there's details in terms of what's in the contract, what's not, as an additional service. So that's the foundation then moving forward into those design services. As you move through the design process, it's a multi-phase effort. It starts out with schematic design. There would be, it's really up to you, but I would recommend doing, essentially 3 estimates during that effort. So as schematic effort, yeah, we would start, and that's kind of what does this look like? What's going in the facility? What are all the code related issues? We get a budgetary estimate, for that. And then we discuss with you, is that on target? Yeah, we'll have some numbers in there in terms of risk. There be management reserves. We'll set up an entire, project budget, not just the cost of the building. And you can say, you know what, this is on track, or this is too expensive, or we want to have alternates in this bid. And from that point, we move forward into the next phase, which is design development. Once again, we're working with building officials and things like that to define the project in more detail. You get another estimate, and until we have resolution in terms of what direction we want to go relative to the budget for checks and balances, you say nope, or yep, we're moving forward. And finally, when we're doing the construction documents, which is a fine detailing and everything in this project, we can decide at what point in time do we want to get that final estimate. So we'd suggest 3 estimates. Not all departments do that, but I think it makes sense, just to ensure that things are on track. In this world right now, there's a lot of risk relative to things going into projects, getting generators. It's like you all trying to buy an apparatus nowadays. It's similar. So we want to mitigate around those risks, and then we go out to bid, we bid the project, and then you move forward with construction. So that's the broad picture of what this looks like. You're in control every step of the way. We can design a building that has plastic laminate countertops, or we can design a building that has something that's more durable. It's really your decision. It's not our decision, and we'll recommend and suggest things that would allow this to be a 50-year building. But there's other decisions that could be made from a financial perspective that could, dial that cost up and down. So,
Brian, can I interrupt just for a
yeah,
sec? Commissioner Lawrence, you have your hand up.
Yes. So one of the question, I think we had an idea. That's pretty much that idea, what you just laid out. But you're going to be charging by the hour for all this work. And I think some of us are kind of wondering, I know what's that all going to cost? And of course, I know that if we keep asking more questions, the same questions over and over, or new questions, that's going to add to the cost. So a lot of that, what it costs to hire you is how much we leave you alone too. So any estimates on the cost of getting to the point where we even start on the design work, let alone the whole design?
Yes. So this original, upfront phase 1, generally we see that in the, kind of order of magnitude of maybe 20 or 30,000 for all the engineering. We have a jump start on this. We understand generally what the program is for 22. There's still decisions to be made for that. And what we'll do is put together a proposal and say, this is what we expect that to be. We'll present that to you. We can assign hours. We can say, we expect this to be 20 hours, 40 hours, whatever it might be. But that can be a fixed fee proposal, and an hourly not to exceed proposal. Our objective is to get you what you need in a very efficient manner. We've done this. I've done this for decades. I've worked on over 300 facilities, and it's just how that process works for most departments. Is that?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. I think others will be able to take that information and understand it a bit better than me. But thank you very much.
Anyone else? Go, Commissioner Chan?
Yeah, I think, I remember by recollection, because they keep on saying, we don't know what kind of, fire station we want. I remember when we have Station 18, before you build, I think we have a big discussion, give you a general idea. I know the critical, actually, among that time, that we have two commissioner, in the profession, they're fire chief and paramedics, and they said one thing they want drive-through. Of course, when the drive-through costs a lot of money, right? So we have a basic among our commissioner to say, that's a high level, right? Do we want to drive through? And second, I think second one is a community room, right? And say, well, I remember if you want a community room, you'll be extra money, but then we weigh in benefit. But it seems to me we do not have any that kind of discussion at all. I think we are on step, but I think is the high level we do. And then you can know exactly, what kind of a building, not wait until later on. So my suggestion is that pay whatever fee right now should come back and get some idea with a general high level, and then you can decide it. I don't want to come in Sunday, come up something that the major thing.
Yeah.
And I know that later on you got to go into detail where the bedroom's supposed to be and all that stuff. That is really detailed. But the major, I like to have. First of all, the 22 is that. Well, you come not this session. Come back and say, you know what? Maybe you let it drive through, but the area just not allow you, so we don't even have to talk about it. But as it is, so
Yeah. And in response to that, absolutely, we will work with staff and whoever needs to be involved in that process. And we can say, hey, if you go, let's say you want to do prototyping of these facilities, and we know down the road that some of these lots are going to be tighter. If you do additional facilities, does it make sense to just do 2-story facilities and reduce, site area? But there's pros and cons, which we'll discuss. We know 2-story facilities can add about 900 square feet
right.
for stairs and all that stuff. And the same thing with community rooms and and that. So we will have those discussions, and up front, we don't want to go down a path without fully vetting this concept. But we do need to go through that initial thing. We can't just say, oh, we're going to move forward and give you a station. It's a very iterative process from start to finish. And that means both design and budget and community engagement in some of these particular facilities and sites, because that's important as well.
So the whole kind of this is kind of boilerplate, kind of a lot of room, but there's no specific price or maximum or floor, that type of thing.
Yeah,
Ceilings and
not
price-wise, there's not.
at this point. We know from the capital facility plan generally what the staffing is going to be in that facility if 22 is a facility. We know based on some site acquisition, test fits, generally what that site can accommodate. We know it can accommodate some drive-through bays. We know it doesn't have to have drive-through bays. We know that there's some wetland impacts to that site.
So what is this? What are we signing? Maybe my fundamental question is basically.
So essentially this is a document that says, here's the contract for the project. We'll then come to you and say, okay, here's a proposal for this initial service. And like I said, that's kind of that phase one that just gets plugged in, and it's a dialogue and discussion with the board. and with the department in terms of what this becomes and what this needs to be. So this essentially is a base called contractual, it's a contract, but it's a framework to plug in projects. And this could be a small project, say you want to do a small remodel. You use this and we put together a fee, we put together the scope and criteria for that, present it to you, we talk about it and understand what's appropriate for this. And then that's included as, essentially an attachment to this.
But there's no escape clause in here. That means,
Absolutely, there's yeah, your council would not have put this together. We didn't put this together. Your council put this together. They wouldn't put this together without an escape clause.
so at any moment, we say, wow, great,
We're
thank
done
you.
with you guys. Yeah,
well-
and there's some criteria, I've forgotten, there's notification. I don't know I don't recall the exact detail, maybe, Rich's office, top of your head may, but yes, every point of the way there's an escape clause. If that's it.
Okay.
That the escape clause. That's in Article 9 of the second document, the B.
Oh, the second
Whatever.
document.
So
Yeah.
let's see here, page 110 of the packet. The termination and suspension is right there. Either party may terminate this agreement with 7 days written notice. And basically, the architect gets paid for what they do up until a point of termination. And that's it.
It was a revised, the second, not the initial, okay.
Yeah, that was in the one last week too.
Yeah.
Or last meeting, so.
Yeah.
I don't think has anything been added or subtracted or changed in this since the last meeting?
No,
Okay.
sir.
Commissioner Chan, are you done?
I'm done.
Vice Chair Rowland.
I think some of the confusion came from a lot of the language in here refers to things that isn't in here. Such as, the budget's in the initial information, you go to the initial information and it's not there. And so I think that's where a lot of this confusion is that the boilerplate of this says things would be present in whatever we're signing, but they're not there.
Yeah.
Can you just make us comfortable with that concept?
Yeah, so essentially, when we put together the fee, we'll outline the exact scope of that. And it's something that you approve. It's not a unilateral, document. And we go through it, we define what consultants, maybe the RFA wants to carry some of the consultants, maybe we carry all of them. It's a discussion with whatever the RFA would like to do. And it's a scoping document. Essentially, here's a scope. This is what's in this. For example, we're working with Rent and RFA on a project. And we essentially are doing some site tested fits. We're validating their program or the design. We're doing a couple massing diagrams with them, and we're engaging the city in terms of any updated permitting, conditional use permits. They have some lot line adjustments they have to do to get that all validated. And then we're getting an estimate to say, okay, based on this information, this is what your new budgetary number is. So that's really what that first phase is with them. And it would be essentially a detailed description of all that.
Gotcha. So would it be kind of safe to say that these are like the rules of the game that we're about to play? But I guess at what point do you start charging, and do we know what the kind of the outlook is for estimated cost for phase 1?
Yeah. So what we'll do is put together a scope and add those unknowns right now and define what that is and give you a proposal for that. And then we'll get a cost estimator, a cost estimator, And there's about 3 estimators that do fire stations in the state. And then that'll be, one of the numbers. So let's say off the cuff, they charge $5,000 for an estimate. Well, we can get 3 different estimates for you for an estimator. But that would be in that original scope, and they would define the budget, and you would say, yes, we're signing off on that. So that's billable time to get.
Gotcha. So the scoping of the project itself before the statement of work kind of is, or I don't know what the document would be
Yeah,
called,
not
but-
so much writing the
But-
scope, but actually.
But all the work to
doing
decide
it,
what's in
doing
it, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. All right, that's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Rowland. Anyone else? Okay, so
Actually, maybe summarizing, okay, so eventually you will come back to us, ask those critical high-level questions, that type of thing, because, I mean, as much as we dedicate to the staff, but I think those major questions, drive-through, community room, this should be input from us, because that will affecting the budget significantly.
Yeah.
Right? And-
Yeah, so if that's a request by the board, absolutely.
Yeah, as me, as a one board member, I like to have some direction. So right now, you have a study. I know you spent a lot of time with our capital facility plan. That's great. We kind of give some idea what each station will look cost wise. At that time, we haven't even gotten any land yet. But for Station 22, you already know the land already, the limitations and all that. So.
Yep. So right now, for example, a big variable is the Washington State Energy Code. It's the Washington State Energy Code is a big variable. That was supposed to be incorporated in June of this year. Because of lawsuits and various things, it's been kicked down the road now to the first of the year. We don't know if that'll be implemented. That's going to dictate some things in this facility. Like, for example, can you bring natural gas into this facility or not? There's some variables, like that, that are out there. How many electric vehicle charging stations will you need? So some of these things are still in flux. And we'll have those discussions and let you know what does that mean for the RFA. That's, the accessibility codes just changed. So
Okay.
now you have to have more clearances in public restrooms.
Okay.
So,
So some of that will impact, I mean, what we have in facilities plan and the estimates we have in the facilities plan will probably change some as a result of what
Yes.
statutes changed, right? And so just so you know, not being able to have natural gas, some of the other things that have changed don't necessarily mean that stations are cheaper moving forward. They add things to make it, cost effective. That when we initially did the estimates in the facilities plan, we were going by what we knew at the time. I will say that they did forward think, and electric vehicles and things were things they were thinking about when they did some of the work in our facility plan. But what Brian's just now talking about is things that happen in the legislation that's very different, that will impact, and my guess is not going to make things cheaper for us in the long run. So there are going to be some differences and some additional information that we're going to hear that's new based on some of the law changes that Brian's talking about from some of the conversations we've had over the last few years, specific to station design that we did in the facilities plan. So once again, things change, and as we go, we're looking at Station 22 today, and my guess is we'll have other changes that come the following years and the following years that are going to impact how we do this, depending on where we go with facility planning and what does that look like for the next 25 years. We're going to have those constant impacts to where some of that's hard to stay in front of too. So I just know that one changed, and it was a big one.
and there will be other discussions. We have some departments that we're working with that essentially say, we are going to design this so it can be converted for electric apparatus. We have other departments saying, large departments saying, we're not going to chase that right now. We'll deal with that. Who knows? Maybe there'll be hydrogen-based vehicles at that point in time. And the way things are going right is it's going to take a couple of years to even get the first electric apparatus. But that's a discussion that needs to be had, and decisions made, really.
You done, Commissioner Chan?
I'm done.
Commissioner Lawrence, you have your hand up?
Yes, Chief Eastman, this is a question for Chief Eastman also. Remember last week I asked about hiring a project manager because we have so many other maintenance things to do. So this is a question for our guest. I propose that we hire someone. We're a little, I think, short-staffed on taking care of maintenance and being proactive, and so we could use a professional. Now, how would a professional in the building trades? I'm not sure what the classification would be, or we would call this person exactly. But would that help out you if you're dealing with an expert on building? And also down the road when we have a contractor, because the last station we built, the contractor dropped the ball and there was a big brouhaha with the subcontract coming to the meeting and saying, hey, I haven't been paid. So would that help you to have a professional to deal with? I mean, our people are great, but they don't build things.
Yep. So we have some departments who elect to use a construction manager, some that don't. Yeah, we can work in either kind of realm. Oftentimes construction managers are hired when there's more than one project. For example, City of Kirkland currently, they have 4 projects that we're doing, almost wrapped up. They used OAC. Mainly, as you point out, staff doesn't have the time to manage things. What I would say is there's a big fee range, from 3 to 5% of construction costs for a construction manager. That was actually identified in the capital facility plan.
Okay, that's good. I understand that. But I was talking about we hire someone because we need someone that's professional and just to take care of what we got. He'd be busy when he wasn't working on the building being involved with new stations. Would that kind of person help me not hiring an outfit?
Yeah. So the only thing I just want to add to that is most construction managers, they're either asking the question of someone in the department and they're doing the legwork. I think an approach that doesn't work well is if the construction manager sits between the department and the architect and there's not that interactive conversation. So someone will have to be fairly involved in this project, making those decisions, because the construction manager will be asking those decisions. They may be to know things. We can provide those services. It all depends on really how the RFA.
So where's the contractor that builds it then? What he's the next step. That's the next. There's a construction manager in between the architect and the contractor, or the RFA and the contractor. There's a
yeah. So there's a direct contractual relationship between the contractor and the RFA. So you go out to bid.
You don't have to hire a construction manager. if we had our own pro over on our staff,
Mm-hmm.
be dogging the contractor, making sure they're on the up and up and doing what they're supposed to do, right?
So Commissioner Lawrence, I think when we talked about this before, and I guess to have somebody manage the project, and I think I still stand by when Commissioner Kenny asked the question, until we get further along and decide what we're going to do and fund our capital needs moving forward, where we may be doing, 1, 2, 3, 4 projects at a time. I think because I think if we hire somebody and we have a lull, the people we're talking about managing the construction project, I think what Brian's talking about isn't somebody that actually grabs a paintbrush and goes and paints facilities or does that work like our facilities folks do. This is a very specific skill set that's designed to be the eyes and ears of the agency, very specific, right? And so I think where I stood before when Commissioner Kenny asked the question is I would recommend for this station, we hire the consultant to do that work. And then as we continue the conversation with regards to where we're going long-term, and if we say we're going to implement and do, I don't know, 3/4 of the facility plan, and we're going to try to do it in 9 years or 10 years, having somebody hired to do that probably is cost-effective and makes sense. But you're talking about somebody to hire, and you're going to hire them for how long of a career? Are you going to hire them as a contractor? And until we know what our long-term plan is, with this skill set, I'm not sure what we do with them if we weren't building fire stations.
Okay.
In my perspective. Now, once again, I'm not, that's
That's
from what I know today, Commissioner Lawrence.
Yeah, that's good. It's like, I don't know. It's just a question. I didn't have I don't have an agenda, or I don't really know what the right answer is. So it's just a question. Very good. You've answered them. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Commissioner Lawrence. Anyone else? Commissioner Kenny.
Chief Eastman, didn't you offer up Chief Curtis as the sacrifice for
So
being the liaison?
I
to
did a
the
couple,
building
right?
project?
So I connected Chief Isotelo, and Chief Curtis, and at least for round one. And I think we still have to go back, and I think Commissioner Chan brings up some good things. At some point, we still need to have a conversation if we move forward and approve the agreement. What is our process? So at what stages do the board, where does the board want, and where does the board want staff to go, and when are the expected touch points so we can go? One of the things that I guess I want to be careful of is we can, depending on where this goes, we can take the next 6 months of board meetings and talk building station 22, and I don't think that's the intent, right? So I'm not saying we have to answer that question today, but I would, because I understand what Commissioner Chan's saying. One of the questions: do we want public meeting rooms or not? Because quite frankly, I know the pros for it, I know the cons for it, and the reality is we've had lots of conversations, and we've gone anywhere from no to everything's going to have it, to as long as we have a couple for battalion, we've accomplished what we need and have a place for public to meet. We need to have that conversation just in general, guidance from the commission to go. As we start some of these other things, I don't know where we draw the line, so we don't paralyze ourselves up and have meetings that takes us so long. I don't know what that looks like. I've not been part of it. But if we move forward with approval of the agreement tonight, I'd like to, maybe after the budget's done in December, to say how does the board want this to look? So staff has the expectations of, when to bring you in, when not to bring you in, or are we gonna have a subcommittee that can meet on a fairly, I don't know how the board wants to do that, but I guess before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I want to make sure we know what that expectation is. And for lack of term, just so staff can make sure we're doing our piece to get the input that the board wants to give, but we're not wasting valuable time of the board for stuff that they don't need to know, so to speak. So
Yeah.
something to consider as we move forward, not to
Mitch.
segue away from your conversation about who's doing the work.
Chief Eastman, I would just say that, I think Chief Curtis would do a good job. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kenny. Commissioner Lawrence.
Yeah.
You have
How about, there should be like a list of stuff that possibly could be something the board would want to think about. So a list, 2-story, single-story, drive-through. I mean, there shouldn't be too long of a list that's kind of in the board's kind of decision-making. So how about a list that we could go through and say, okay, this is, out of all these things you've listed, these are the things that we want to be involved in the decision-making. Does that kind of make some comments?
I think staff and once, like I said, if we move forward, we can work with Brian and lean on his expertise to know some of those pieces. Have some preliminary conversations, dust off the facilities plan, and talk about those pieces, and then have a touch point back with the board. Have at least give the list, have a preliminary conversation, decide how we want to get to find, how we're going to make the final decisions and move forward. I think it'll be, I don't think it's going to be too difficult to do, Commissioner Lawrence. I just want to make sure, as we go, that I don't have a misunderstanding of
electric vehicles, or they're the big kind of deals that we're gonna go through, but leave the stuff. So just a list, and we could go, yeah, we'd like, the board would vote on, this is what we'd like to be involved in decision-making as whenever it's the time to make a decision. Okay?
Sounds good. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lawrence. Anyone else? All right. That being said, Chair would like to entertain a motion to approve and authorize the fire chief or his designee to sign the AIA document B101 to -2017 standard form of agreement between owner and architect. Commissioner Lawrence, you have your hand up.
So moved.
Seconded, okay. Moved and seconded. Any further discussion on the topic? Commissioner Kenny.
Oh, yes. I am opposed and be voting no on the motion, not due to TCA. TCA has provided architectural and engineering services for many years for a number of our projects, as long as I've been on the board. And TCA is not perfect, but TCA is, in my opinion, one of the premier agencies helping to build fire stations in the state, and has worked on lots of cities. Mr. Harris just mentioned Kirkland. I know Seattle, big projects for Seattle in the past, which is all good. My concern is related to the public and the opportunity for adequate, not bids, but responses to the request for proposal. Our staff only allowed 9 days. That's not business days, 9 days.
That was an RFQ, request for qualifications.
Right, request for qualifications.
Which is separate from a proposal.
It's a request for qualifications, 9 days, including weekends. And we wouldn't open an opportunity for applications for a fire chief or for fire commissioner for only 9 days. And I note that we only allowed 9 days for potential applicants to submit their materials, and yet we spent more than 3 months negotiating the contract here. So we're not, do we know we got the best opportunity, the best applicants to be considered? I don't know. I think TCA, I've worked with them. They're very competitive. Obviously, they worked on our capital facilities plan. I was on the capital facilities plan committee as part of that. Very fine work. Obviously the inside track, because they know what we're thinking on a lot of things. So I would expect them to be very competitive. But my concern is for the broader public and the amount of money that's at issue, which is $1.2 to $1.4 million on this particular contract, with 6 projects total. That could be in the range of $5 million in fees down the road, maybe, maybe not, maybe. And so that's my concern, is that there was not an adequate opportunity on the front end of this for competition, essentially. So for those reasons, I'm voting no.
Anyone else? Liaison Swisher.
I'd just like to address Mr. Kenny's comments. Any large firm that we would be considered for this type of deal should already have their qualifications ready to go. And the only thing they would need to add to it are projects that would be specific to what you're asking for. In this case, they would say, we have built fire stations for X, Y, and Z. 9 days, especially knowing that the proposal was sent out to 58 or 59 agencies on the roster. Any of those agencies that wanted to participate, 9 days should have been more than enough time for them to provide their qualifications, because you weren't asking for a proposal. They didn't have to put any numbers together. They had to take their qualifications that they already should have ready to go and tack on to them the projects that pertain to the type of project that you're asking for. And if they don't have that ready to go, they're probably not the agency you'd want to hire to do the job in the first place.
Thank you. Richard, just a quick question for you. For the RFQ process, 9 days, is that usual and customary?
I don't know that there is a usual and customary. It's really up to the agency to decide, how long to leave it open for in a particular case. I'd say ordinarily, if it's probably 2 weeks, but could be longer. I've seen it less. It depends on the size of the project, that just and the agency's preferences. So as was stated earlier, there is no minimum time frame set forth in the statute. So really is up to the agency's discretion.
Thank you. Vice Chair Rowland, do you have your hand up?
I guess
Can
probably
you-
the best,
Mike?
probably the best person to ask is someone that may actually field these RFQs occasionally. What's your experience, with different agencies in the RFQ? How long is standard in your experience?
Yeah, I think as, Rich Davis mentioned, we have them 5 days, 2 weeks. It's really all over the place. And also, we do have packets set up. There's, any firm that we compete with, there's only a handful of firms. They have packets. And then they just have to decide, do they want to pursue it or don't they want to pursue it? So,
Gotcha.
5 days, 2 weeks, that's not out of the ordinary.
Well, I will say that I definitely understand Commissioner Kenny's position with the public looking at any of this stuff. They don't know what's usual and customary. It is all across the map. And I think that, hindsight 2020, if we had known, that the commissioners were going to be concerned with the duration, I'm sure that staff would have taken an extra week. It wouldn't have cost us much. So I think this is definitely, when it comes to being a steward of the public's, trust, appearances matter. The layperson looking on going, wow, it seems like the game's rigged. They're going to look for anything like that. So I would just say that, in the future, I'm sure that staff will take that into consideration. And if it takes an extra week, it takes an extra week. In the grand scheme of things, it's not a big deal. And we'll do that. We can't really turn back the clock or, go back to, square one and put out another RFQ. I mean, I guess we could, but I think we'd end up kind of where we're already at right now. So I do support this, but just with the I guess expectation that in the future we'll be cognizant of that sensitivity.
Thank you, Vice Chair Rowland. Just to summarize real quick, you're saying that firms, yourself and others in your size competing for this type of business have packets set aside just ready to go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And-
That's new information.
And essentially as you suggested. Yeah, we tweak a couple of things.
Yeah.
Tweak the cover letter. Well, you know, but that's not a 9-day effort.
Right. Thank you. Commissioner Chan.
I just want to say that I'm going to abstain from the vote because it's still, I'm signing up for $1 million contract. But I'm comfortable now. I have an escape clause so that anything time go. But I do encouraging you, TCA come back as soon as possible. We have a real discussions and all that. Then I want to find out that what the really architecture fees is going to be.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I'm going to abstain from that.
Thank you. Commissioner Lawrence, you have your hand up.
Yes, I just want to say that I think Commissioner Kenny had legitimate concerns, and I do like what Commissioner Rowland said. So maybe could be part of the staff's policy and procedures manual, the RFQs, be a minimum of 2 weeks, and because kind of get it documented. That's the way we do things from now on. Save this kind of conversation or these hiccups for in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, with that, we'll take a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Abstentions?
When-
All right, ayes have it. Thank you.
Staff thanks you very much and appreciate the dialogue, and rest assured we will put things out for no less than 2 weeks moving forward in the future. I think that's a reasonable request.
And all the designs have to have a fire pole, okay, I'm just saying.
I'm all in.
Fire pole, I was thinking slide.
No. Fire pole or nothing, sorry.
Put it on the list of board
A lot of risk, a lot of good liability.
All right, on to unfinished business. Item B, presentation of the chief's preliminary 2024 budget and board budget deliberations with CFO Bothwell.
All right, thank you, Chair. Good evening, Commissioners and Liaisons. So tonight's a big night. We're unveiling the 2024 Chief's preliminary budget. I emailed this out to you Friday afternoon, and I just sent you a couple hours ago a revised copy. The only difference is that the one I sent out a couple hours ago has page numbers. I had forgotten to put those on initially. So that's in your inbox. It's also, the budget is available on the website for the public. So really quickly, the Chief's preliminary budget is the administration's budget proposal. For our liaisons, it's the same thing as the mayor's or city manager's proposed budget. It is a complete and balanced budget package, so it includes everything we need to provide services next year, including budgeted revenues. We are budgeting a deficit this year, and so we have identified resources in the budget to fund that deficit as well. Tonight's presentation signals the end of the administration's budget development and the start of the board's budget deliberations. So we're switching as staff. We've been building this budget, and now it's time for us to support your budget deliberations. So revenues in the status quo budget, or excuse me, revenues in this budget are based on the status quo. So it's the current revenue mix from 2023 with no additions, with historical annual increases. So that means 1% increase for property tax plus new construction, 2% for the benefit charge. So the result for existing RFA is less than a 2% increase in taxes and fees. It does include annexation property tax. So property tax coming from the newly annexed areas. The increase compared to what they paid last year is a little more complicated. And I think that was discussed during annexations. But in most cases, it's probably going to be more than 2%. So the expenditure side is similar. It's based on the status quo. It's just the cost to maintain current levels of service with only 3 discretionary additions. The first one is $40,000 to take a revenue initiative to voters. So most recently, that has been discussed as being a renewal of the benefit charge. There's $15,000 for EMS division restructuring and $25,000 for organization-wide training and development. So the total of these discretionary additions is about $80,000. And just for perspective, That's about 0.07 of our total $109 million budget. So these are really, really small in the context of our budget. So the result is a $3.4 million deficit, and the proposal funds that with general fund cash and investments that are in excess of the minimum fund balance target. So we do meet the minimum fund balance target in the general fund. And then my final note here is that all financial targets and commitments are met with this budget. So not only the general fund minimum fund balance target, but also the emergency fund is fully funded at 5% of revenue. The self-insurance plan is fully funded. Asset replacements into the future are funded based on the best available data now. Left one liabilities, all the rest of it. So this is a very responsible budget. For next steps, we have board budget deliberations. They're scheduled for every meeting between now and November 21st. We have a budget and revenue public hearing on October 17th. We've got adoption of the budget scheduled for November 21st, which is the last meeting before Thanksgiving. And as I mentioned earlier, staff's role is changing. So now that the budget's been handed over to the board, our role is to support your budget deliberations. We only have one kind of scheduled touch or interaction that we're aware of, and that's revenue planning updates that are scheduled for October 17th. And that's where we'll pick up the work that was done during the workshop and continue that. And then I added another one that's not been discussed yet, but I thought might be of interest to you all, and that's just a quick assessed value and levy rate update based on the preliminary information out of the county. And that is the end of the presentation. So I'm going to unshare, and if there are any questions, I'm happy to take those.
Commissioner Kenny, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Bothwell, thank you. Question for you. I don't know when we were talking about revenue. What did you come to as an estimate regarding, I don't know if we talked about it before, new construction. What did you come to regarding new construction?
That's a great question. So the county's come back, preliminary numbers are 533 million. Against our AV last year, about 54 million. So it's almost that 1% that we had projected in the budget. So we initially in the forecast, we'd assumed 2%, the 1% increase plus new construction. And the new construction came in just a little bit under, and those are just preliminary numbers. So the county will come back with more. I will note, and the reason I think that there might be interest in a discussion of levy rates and assessed value is that it's really complicated this year, just like it was last year. When we have annexations, the county is still grappling with all those various pieces. And so the data gets better, and it kind of has some if it's like last year, it has some swings in what they're reporting to us. And so we can talk through those things during your budget deliberations, but the preliminary number is 533 million. I honestly couldn't tell you if that includes the annexed areas or not, just because we don't get that level of detail yet, but we can do a deep dive on that too.
Second question for you. I saw in the in your document that you were estimating inflation, I believe, at 5.7% for next year. Is that, am I correct on that?
No, that was this year. I think next year in the projection that's in the long range forecast, it's supposed to, they were, and this is, I made a little disclaimer last time I presented to you that these projections are kind of in flux. The Fed, there's a lot of economic news out there that suggests that the rate of inflation is going to be kind of persistently high for a little longer than we thought maybe 2 months ago or even a month ago. But I believe in 2025, it's supposed to normalize down to something over 3%. If you give me just 1 second, I'll flip to that page. It's in the notes on the long range forecast schedule. 2025 is 2.7 and 2. Well, there's two sources that we're utilizing. One says 2.7, one says 2.6. I think those are when economists update their estimates, I think those are going to go up.
And what are you at this point predicting for or using for 2024?
Well, we know labor, the contract for CPIW is 4.5% for labor.
Yeah, but that's based on the June to June.
That's what we use for, yeah, that's what we use for the labor contract starting January 1st.
But are you applying that to everything else also?
Well, the status quo budget's actually based on what divisions told us that they were projecting their costs to be based on the status quo. So the initial expenditure forecast that I presented back in July did apply just inflationary, mid-inflationary adjustments to everything that wasn't salaries. And those have actually been trued up with what divisions came back and said they needed. And they were actually a little bit lower than the inflation we had initially used.
And so does your wage increase or just wages 2024 for non-represented employees is factored at what inflation rate for 2024?
4.5%, same as represented labor.
And I'm assuming that's built into these numbers
Correct.
for those salaries. So we'd be talking about what I'm getting towards is we'd be talking about a COLA resolution for that third meeting in November. And at this point, you're predicting for 4.5% increase.
That's correct.
Okay. That's all I've got for now. Thanks.
Thank you.
Commissioner Chan?
Yeah, on the new buildings, we won't get it until they finish, right? That's the tax.
For that's correct.
No construction, yeah.
When the
So-
counties and the cities, they report that information, or that information is reported to the assessor's office when it's completed.
Right, because I'm just driving around to see a lot of continued building. So are we expecting, especially Linwood area and Monic Terrace area? That
Well,
will be,
Let me revise that statement. So when they add it to the tax rolls, they may do, I could check in with some of the cities and see when they report it. If they have a large commercial structure, they may report the value of those improvements incrementally. I honestly can't answer that question with certainty.
okay, well, I'm hoping there's a more revenue in there. I agree with you, the inflation now, well, today's stop, they were keeping talking, but one more raise of interest rate just to because the inflation is the biggest. The federal government want to really get down to inflation. So, but anyway, so that but next meeting, I think we'll have more detail on some of the questions I have for you.
Okay. Just, yeah, I mean, anything that you all want, we're here to support your budget deliberations. So anything you want more information on, just, please give us enough lead time so we can prepare the documents and be prepared when we come to speak to present the information. But yeah, just let us know what that is. That's what we're here for now.
Right.
Anyone else? Back to Commissioner Kinney.
Yeah, Mr. Bothwell, I don't really think it's for you. I think it's for Chief Eastman. The one-time cost of service study, $200,000 amount. Is that for a cost of service study along the lines of what we did with Burke a few years back, or are you thinking of something else?
So I think it was, I gotta go look. I think it's a combination of more than just one thing. I don't know, and I can't find it real quick, is we've got the benefit charge consultant in there. They're 18,000. So there's multiple things in that. And so as you know, what we're doing with the cost of service study is we've got Jennifer Party doing that to the point where hopefully when this is done, she'll be able to update it and understand the model enough to tweak as we need it tweaked and not have to go back to Burke. But we're not done with that process yet. And so I'd have to go back and look exactly at that number. Because there was a couple other things that went into that, if I'm not mistaken.
Because I think the last time we did like a full study, the last time we talked about it, I think was winter of 2022. We might have also had an update from Burke in spring of 2021, and Burke is from 2020 or 2019. So it's been a little while.
Yeah, so I think the first one was 18, then we updated it following 18, 19, we updated it in 1920, and then the pandemic hit. We were wanting to do it and we backed off because everything going on with the pandemic. And then, I think this year, things normalized and the board wanted a desire to get that, polish it off and then update it. And things have changed, right? Right now, we don't have Briar, Malt Lake Terraces contracts anymore.
Right.
And so, Jennifer's doing along with Burke, kind of getting those pieces out of it because they're not relevant anymore, right? If we remember back when we first did the cost of service analysis or that report, the initial thing was for us to help us inform of what pieces cost. Historically, what we bring you and staff used to do this is we come to you something in July and tell you it's $100,000 and really the total cost for a full year is $200,000. And so part of the cost of service was to say, if we have, and we had cost centers, if we wanted to add another MSO, what does that actually mean? Because it's not one person, it's four. And then there's overtime. And we actually now have the ability not just to look at what Chris can look at is what's the cost of four people. We can actually look at it in a little bit more detail, some of the direct and indirect costs associated with that program or that cost center and give you a better full picture. Now, right? So a station, we know what station people cost. It's not hard to figure out. But when you add, utilities and all those other pieces, we get a little bit more exact. So when we, at the time we were looking at potentially an info fire station, the question is, what does that cost? We build the fire station and then it's for this, and this, it's this many dollars annually to operate out of. That's all encompassing. So we can give you that information. And then the sidebar of that is we looked at the work that was done in the contract city just to kind of help. Are they paying what they should? Are they not paying what they should? And use that as something that we get in addition to helping us strategize about cost of service, cost of what we do, in when we have these strategic conversations. So Jennifer's cleaning that up. I know they're adding some additional population stuff to it. So I'm hoping that we can do that more on our own and less reliant on Burke, unless we get to a place where we want something very, very different and need the experts of Burke or doing it that way. So I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, no, I think doing that sounds like a good idea. It's time.
Yeah, and
Refresh it every so often.
And I thought we'd be close to bringing you something back this month. Unfortunately, COVID has reared its head over the last few weeks, and our staff and Burke staff, there's been a lot of people out as a result of COVID, whether it's them or their family getting it, and it kind of slowed down. So I'm hoping we can still get you that report prior to the end of the year. And maybe it'll be a first of next year based on what we have. And I'm pretty sure Jennifer will have it in a place where we can update it quickly to make it comparable to what we did in 2023. It would be the hope, right? And give you, as we continue to talk, and I think it'll be an important conversation, a facilities planning conversation, because capital is only one piece of the puzzle. There's other pieces and deals with the staff and the equipment stuff to go there. So I'm hoping to bring that forward. I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. I just know she's working it. And once again, we've been dealing with COVID, so we're a little bit behind. But she's working diligently on it as we go, and hopefully before the end of the year, if not right after the first of the year.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Commissioner Fernhoff.
Yeah, I just wanted to say to CFO Bothwell, nice job on the packet. I know there's a lot of work that goes into this. We are kind of nitpicking, this and that and the other thing, but I just want to acknowledge you for the hard work and staff for the hard work. It's not light to pull off something like this and make it make sense. So thank you.
All right. Anyone else? All right, with that, it is 8:24. Our next item is South County Fire Division brief with our Human Resources Department. I'm gonna go ahead and take a 10-minute break.
Yeah.
And we'll come back at 8:35. Unfinished business, South County Fire Division.
Yep, so, at the request, of the board, I know you guys have all met our new HR director, David, but, he's gonna give the overall brief of, and his is probably gonna be a little different than the others, because he probably has some different context and he's new, to the organization and, can tell you what the division's doing and then I know, the commissioners have some questions for him. So with that, David, go ahead and take it away and go.
Thanks, Chair. Good evening, commissioners and liaison. I'm laughing because the first two things I was going to say would be my presentation will be different because I'm new. And that's pretty good. And obviously there was some dramatic change in HR last fall. I'll start by sharing that I'm happy to report that we are fully staffed in HR. In the 10 weeks or so from early June through mid-August, we made 3 hires.
You don't mind, can you brief a little bit your background? So I know one time you talk about your background.
Me personally?
Yeah, personally, so I know, where, and then were you one of the consulting?
No.
The interim, or you're a different one? Okay, you're not part of the company that, okay,
No.
right.
David, can you also speak up from your diaphragm like you're in drama class?
Oh,
Yell at us.
Yeah, actually, the back.
We've got a
we
fan
should
of us.
get the things smaller.
Closer
They're way
together?
Too far.
Well, with the new wave of COVID, I'm not so sure. So I come to South County Fire, a pretty deeply experienced HR guy from healthcare and research. Most recently, Virginia Mason Medical Center, but with tours of duty at Seattle Children's and Fred Hutch and the University of Washington. So about 25 years in the Northwest of HR leadership, primarily in healthcare settings. So I understand a fair amount about the sort of broader issues we face when it comes to community resource paramedics and EMS and some of those things in terms of being part of the healthcare support network for a community. I am in fact new to a fire service and new to the to public HR, as it were. I've been private industry all that time, but no, not Archbright Consulting, if that helps.
Okay.
So I was mentioning, happy to report that we made 3 hires in about 10 weeks between June and August. Mary Miley in recruiting. Once I turn it on.
Speak up louder in the room so we can hear you over the fans.
Okay. Mary Miley in recruiting, myself, and Lacey Cosgrove, who's the most recent hire, who's a benefits person. And I think that it's worth mentioning that the folks who preceded us, Hetty Levinsky and Lori DeLeon, should get some credit. Indeed, they served alongside Archbright Consulting folks who were here during that transition period. But it's really their efforts, frankly, their commitment that kept services for the RFA from an HR perspective going through that period. We now no longer have Archbright consultants that are supporting the RFA directly. We're members of Archbright, so we're part of a membership that's a modest fee so that we can access their suite of services, but we no longer have hour for hour consultants on site at the RFA, thankfully. I do think we've got kind of the right mixture of folks when I look at the experience, the qualifications, the roles, the responsibilities that we have in our group. I think we have the right mix, and I think we have the right number of people. If we grow any further, if the RFA continues to grow, I think we do need to look at those staffing ratios. But right now, I believe HR is where it needs to be in that sense. You may recall when I first met with the board a few months ago, because it's been only 3 months or so, I mentioned that my intention was to come here and spend a lot of my time in the first 4 to 6 months just getting out and talking to people, asking folks questions. How's it working? What are you getting from HR that works for you? what doesn't work, what do you want more of, less of, that sort of thing. And I've been very intentional about doing that. I make sure to get out of my office at least once a week and go out. I focus primarily on going to the stations, and I've been to all 15 of them multiple times. I've done that a few different ways. So I've gone out on helmet ceremonies to congratulate folks as they've matriculated through some important stage in their career. I've gone on a few ride-alongs with the battalion chiefs. I've gone out with Hetty Levinsky, the HR manager, to a couple of stations. Mostly, though, I've just gone out myself, unannounced, and I will appear at a station if it seems as though the crew's there and they're not out on a call, which has resulted in a few sort of funny experiences when random guy in street clothes comes through the side door of a station. The funniest example would be the first time I went to station 23. I went through what I thought was a back door into the station and ended up in a closet. And the door closed behind me and it was pretty dark. And I rustled around and made a lot of noise and found my way out and into the bay. And as I rounded the corner to go inside the firehouse, a couple firefighters come running out to find out what's happening. And what's really impressive about that experience, because it's been repeated over and over, wherever I've shown up as a sort of unknown quantity, people have been incredibly polite and helpful. And early on, when they really didn't know me, folks thought I was just some overzealous member of the public. And invariably, universally, they were polite and said, "Can I help you?" As opposed to, "What are you doing here?" So just a good example of what it's been like for me to go out and talk to people. I've also focused on kind of reaching out in HQ. So I've made a very intentional effort of not only asking those kind of general HR questions, but being more specific with other division heads and folks in those departments to say, how does HR interact with your division? And how might we do that differently? The first and best example is probably with the finance division. There's a lot of natural operational kind of workflow that's integrated with HR, with payroll, with benefits, leaves, that sort of thing, payroll. And our groups have a lot of natural kind of ad hoc interactions because of that. But CFO Bothwell and I have gone further and tried to create some structure around that and started a standing group that's interdivisional so that we can look down the road a bit and not just deal with the issues of the day, but say on the horizon, what sort of things are potentially subject to some improvement? Where might we possibly change things? Where could we improve things? Where do we have to do something so as to avoid a problem? So that's probably the best example, but I've worked with other divisions. A lot of work with the small but mighty Health and Safety Division, Chief Hudson and Captain Rudiger, who's assigned there temporarily. They've turned out a lot of great initiatives that I've participated in, helping to create and advocate for administrative wellness, helping to ensure that we can pay on our health plan for the upcoming cancer screening that we're doing, which we think is a great idea. Helping to acknowledge that there are sometimes a need for a connection point or a handoff with some safety incidents that have HR implications. We've been doing a lot of work that's truly ongoing, understanding the intersection between HR benefits and leaves on one hand, and some of the programs in health and safety on the other, like peer support and the recess program, where those things could be at some points in conflict or hopefully more in concert. I've worked with the folks in the training division. Chief Wells has been incredibly helpful to me, helping me to understand the processes for kind of training and evaluating both recruits and probationary firefighters. I've worked with Chief Ness just to augment his already really great work on Captain's College, which is happening right now. I've worked with Chief Ness and Chief Wells together, as well as Hetty Levinsky, to create and align an annual schedule that harmonizes both our promotional testing processes and our recruiting processes. So those things make sense, flow appropriately, and work for the folks in the RFA who do need to go through those processes and need to schedule their time. With the operations division, I've done a lot of work with one of three subcommittees. Chief Chalfant has three focus areas of strategies working on accountability, communication, and staffing. I've mostly worked with the accountability subcommittee, and we've got some deliverables that are proposals related to progressive discipline, to annual performance reviews, and to probationary firefighter processes. Just today, I work with that group a bit to see in the other areas, the other subcommittees around communication and staffing, where might the HR division help? Because I haven't been involved yet. I've done a lot of work with the folks in the local, and it's been more casual, if you will, more just getting to know people. So I have gotten to know Pat and Matt and Justin and Patrick pretty well, both just chatting, but also as pieces of business have come our way. So we've had specific items on the Labor and Management Committee agenda where we've needed to talk. There have been questions around procedure and policy where we've needed to connect. And I've taken it upon myself to give them a little bit of a warning when we've had issues come to HR that might potentially have some suggestion or impact on discipline. So that's another area where I've tried to really reach out. In all these kind of conversations that I've had, as I mentioned earlier, I've mostly focused on listening, but I do come to South County with a lot of experience in human resources and with a philosophy. So I've tried in all those interactions to telegraph those things. And not only have I learned a lot, because I really have, but the mere act of engaging in those conversations, the mere act of going out and listening to people is already changing the perspective that folks have about HR at the RFA, which I think is huge. One thing I've certainly found is that the prior HR administration, I think, was a bit siloed, weirdly even siloed within itself and from itself, but more importantly, siloed from key parts of the organization. A lot of the rank and file didn't necessarily have a great deal of trust, and there certainly wasn't an ongoing, open, productive communication relationship between the local and HR. So I think my effort to go out and talk to people and learn from them and express to them my belief about how we all should work together is beginning to make a difference. I have lots that I could sort of share with you in terms of opinions or assessments, but I'll leave it there because I've been talking a bit and see what questions you may have.
We'll start off with Commissioner Lawrence.
It's my turn.
Yes, Commissioner Lawrence.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was nice meeting you a couple months ago. Appreciate what you just had to say. It all sounds really good. And I encourage you to keep up your getting to know everybody and how the system works, the organization works. But historically, though, what gets us into trouble? I guess the polite expression to cover everything would be hanky-panky. And so what can you do to educate the staff on avoiding those kind of picadillos? And thank you.
Well, Commissioner Lawrence, at the risk of asking a funny question, tell me more what you mean when you say hanky-panky.
Is that a generational thing? Am I that old? Chief Eastman, could you whisper in HR director's ear what that might mean?
I think he knows now.
I think I gather. Organizations anywhere are going to confront the issues of people fraternizing, if that's what we're talking about. And it's not illegal. It is a challenge when you have people with a supervisory or auditory relationship, and we are, rife with those. So depending upon who is engaging in personal concert with whom, we may need to step in. And there are certainly instances recently where that's been the case, where we have been able to identify and stave off, not necessarily any, but most of the risk associated with that sort of a situation. I frankly think we have exposure that goes beyond that sort of behavior. It's more about how are we treating each other just in the course of work? And do we have the appropriate accountability and systems to ensure that we have fair, proportional, logical due process for situations when we do need to deal with behavior that's inconsistent with policy or values? I think that's the bigger issue. That's just a portion of it.
What about education? What about, do we need more, a little bit more proactive, hey, everybody, this is the kind of thinking and thought pattern that leads to lots of commotion and down the road. What about proactive education?
I think we absolutely do. In fact, one of the few things that made it into the chief's budget was a request for $25,000 for some training. But I think it goes beyond paid for training. I think there are procedural aspects that need to be shorn up and shared and held and understood more widely that we are working on. I think there are cultural pieces as well around ownership, that the organization has grown so fast and is now so large that we don't have a consistent sense culturally of what it means to have ownership or accountability and where it rests. And I think those are the kinds of conversations that we've begun having, and we need to have more of at every level. Certainly when it comes to captains and battalion chiefs, there's a lot of work in making sure that those folks have the right tools and the right sort of sense of what is our process for moving through those situations, so that we do have fair, appropriate, consistent treatment and can avoid the worst sort of risk issues that come the way of a person like myself.
Thank you very much.
Vice Chair Rowland. Can you turn, is the mic on?
There we go. So you mentioned your philosophy on HR in passing, but what is it? How could you sum it up in a few words or a few sentences?
Yes, I would say it's to be as transparent as possible, which you don't usually hear from HR people, recognizing there are times when you absolutely need to recognize and respect confidentiality. But I believe HR people fall way over to one side in that regard and think everything is a state secret. And to the extent that we can be open and transparent, create a safe space for people to bring issues so that we can deal with them confidentially and appropriately, and find ways to help leadership move forward when we do see gaps like education or like training, and identify how might we change the current state of affairs through those sorts of processes. That to me is what HR should be doing. It should be pretty darn clear to people who HR is and what they do. Those people should be available and out. They should create a safe space and a confidential space for those situations that call for it, but don't overplay that into being some sort of black box that nobody understands and everyone's afraid of.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kenny,
Yes.
can you turn your mic on?
There we go. Mr. Collin, thank you. Had a few questions for you. Do you have experience with labor contract negotiation in the past?
I do.
And are you getting read in on our labor contract issues currently?
Issues to be sure. So being a part of the labor management committee regularly, I'm hearing what the issues are. I have not yet been woven into negotiations per se, because we clearly have an existing contract with most of the membership, and the DC contract is something that was happening at about the time that I came. So I didn't participate in that, but in terms of ongoing issues, grievances, what sort of things we're working on with the local so as to avoid grievances, I'm definitely enmeshed in that.
And are you getting read in on our litigation issues?
To some extent, I don't know to how thoroughly. So I'm aware of some of the pending litigation, but I wouldn't say that I'm thoroughly read in, no.
Okay. I haven't seen you involved on either contract stuff or litigation stuff over the last number of months, so I'm hopeful that you will be, because I think that brings a lot of value to the table for the board to have that perspective from HR that we don't get otherwise. So I'm hoping you will be involved in those.
I'm
That's
certainly
just
open to
my
that.
comment. Another question for you. I look to HR to provide an opinion or be aware of, comment on our self-insurance healthcare process. We usually only hear from our consultant that helps us with the self-insurance healthcare once a year, but to me, it's a big deal. It's millions of dollars worth of benefits that keep our employees healthy and their families healthy. Last time we had a presentation, we have more than 1,000 lives that rely on our healthcare that's provided through self-insurance. So I'm always interested in your opinion on how it's going and how it can do better. And I know we have consultants that do some of that, are responsible for it, but I'm always looking to the HR director about, are we doing the right thing, particularly vis-a-vis other places you worked in healthcare. That's something that I'll be interested in your opinion on when it rolls around again. We're still a number of months away, but in the past, the HR director has had contact with our many attorneys. My recollection is the HR director works with 3 sets of attorneys: our corporate counsel, our HR counsel, and our employee benefits counsel. And so I am wondering, how many of those attorneys have you had an opportunity to work with so far?
I think I'm only up to 2. Okay. Which is to say, Labor Council and Esquire Davis, who's joining us this evening. I've certainly benefited from his counsel, but that's the extent of it thus far.
Okay, good. And my last question for you is diversity training. And so diversity training in the past, we haven't talked about it here at the board recently. We've talked about it in the past. It's been an issue in the past. It is generally one way or another worked through the HR director or the HR department. So it is something that I am interested in, and you're going to see me asking about that in the future. So I want to get that at least on your radar. That has been treated in different ways by past HR directors, but I think it is something that we need to continue to come back to. And I did want to then tie that into the budget, because when we talked about that $25,000 that you referenced, we talked about it at our last meeting, and it's for MJ Consulting. And from what Chief Eastman was saying about it, it seemed to reference some component potentially of diversity training, but it didn't really seem to be that. It was more, at least that's not the impression that I got. So then I wanted to tie it back to, so what exactly are we getting out of that $25,000 in MJ Consulting?
It's really, in a sense, $50,000. 25 is a repeat of what we had last year. And we're going to bring back somebody who previously appeared, which is, I think, what you're referring to. The other 25 that I've sought isn't really earmarked yet. The possibilities range from diversity, which is one of the things that I've thought about as well, and leadership training. There are other possibilities we could bring forth, and I was just hoping to actually get the money and make that determination. But those are the things we've sort of talked about, that we clearly need some more leadership training, and we don't really have anything in the way of a group yet to decide what diversity programming or training might look like. But that's something, implicit bias or some of the other topics that we could easily cover, and that might be helpful.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Chan.
Well, thank you. HR, I thought, actually, I probably dating myself when I first started my career. It's called personnel departments and all different departments.
Mine too.
So, actually, HR is very difficult to me, more my prior experience, other company. It's a really fine line because HR is kind of protecting the company, make sure they don't get into trouble and all that. at the same time, you need to gain trust. How do you see yourself that difficulty? Because people, confide in you, and then you really walk a fine line. I'm just wondering how you do that.
I've frankly, Commissioner Chan, I think those things are in concert. I think you can establish a trusting relationship where, again, my belief in some version of transparency, as much as is
Right.
appropriate legal, lets people know what's happening and why. And that level of trust enables you to avoid a lot of the problems you get when people feel mistreated or done to, even if they've been treated utterly fairly. To the extent that they're in the dark about things, they will sometimes believe that they've been mistreated, and they will pursue litigation. They will go to the EEOC. They will complain to their colleagues. They will quit. So there are all sorts of issues that I think come about that are risk related, that are actually helped, that are avoided if you are trusting, if you're somebody who's a known quantity. The challenge is you need to appear as though you're utterly objective. So I don't do what Thad Hovis says all day, every day. I don't do what the union says all day, every day. I don't do what a complaining employee says all day, every day. I have to find the way through that says we have values, we have rules, we have statutes we're living by. Where's the sweet spot that says, here's what's right and legal, appropriate and fair to do, and be very clear about that so that people know there's a basis for what you're doing, what you're saying. That, to my mind, is how you can get to a place where you are both trusted and create not just being some friendly guy to everybody, but an environment where people will tend to believe that things are fair.
Well, to me, I see HR as a free you kind of mentioned a few already. Number one, you want motivation, morale, and that's high. And then one is compliance. You need all this all in there. And then the other one is really, I know Google, the HR really, literally human resources, looking forward, what kind of people we need for the organization to grow and everything else. I think today is a really good example. Should we hire a building consultant or not? Because we're growing and all that. And I don't want to say it, but right now, I know we have a lot of deputy chief, but certain areas, the expertise, that's why the CFO is not under deputy chief, HR is not a deputy chief, and that type of thing. So are you maybe not today, but maybe can you give us to say, no, should you really look at how many tasks is that? Should you be hiring a building person? Because we're what total 16 station now. And then plus you might have a storage area and facility. One of my major concerns is that last time we have the leaking in the station 11 until the water flooding. So if someone had the preventive building, to me, that's necessary. So are you able to kind of, maybe I ask your experience, which area did you come up from?
Well, I'm sort of a generalist by trade, but I think I've dealt more with the sort of ugly side of HR in my career. Less of the sort of forward-looking planning and more of the avoid conflict, lawsuits, deal with engagement, try to engage people.
Okay.
And try to work on systems that are going to make sure that people understand how things work and that they're treated fairly and appropriately, as opposed to that sort of planning piece. But I know we need that as well. We need to look at when might it make sense to contract for or get consulting services to manage a project, and when do we have enough work to say that's a body that we bring in and hire directly. That's some of the thought that I can bring to bear to these conversations. But to answer your question pretty directly, I've been a lot more in the weeds historically. I've done lots of different things, and I know that's one of those things that in a role like this, in a place like this, I'll need to think more about. And to your question earlier, benefits is something that I've rarely managed. I've been aware of it. I've made recommendations about it. It'll be a shift for me to really deal more directly with a consultant and say, are we getting out of our plan what we need? Do we need to add, change, delete so as to get a better return on that investment? I know that's part of what I need to do to really help the RFA. And it's something that will be a stretch in a sense, but not impossible.
Well, I think it's a good example. We're growing, but also we're, in general, our organization is very innovative, really creative thinking, and we kind of like to do. He used to be an IT guy. That's it, right? I mean, and suddenly become, one and then three. So we do need, because we talk about drone and other things and AI and all that stuff. So I hope you can really keep an eye on it, what our future need as we grow. So that's all. Welcome to South County Fire.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Chan. Anyone else? Vice Chair Rowland?
I just wanted to say that as I look at the organization, it's growing very quickly. We have some of the lowest staff to employee ratios or to firefighter ratios, of comparable agencies. And with that lean attitude has been a lot of benefits. We have people wearing a lot of hats, so they understand their decisions and their duties in context of everything else it touches. Though from an outsider looking in, I definitely see that, some of this can lead to people being fragmented between different responsibilities, trying to get everything done, when you're juggling a couple different plates. And then you have to go to different departments because the overlap is there. Maybe we don't have, I guess I don't want to make any assertions, but I will say that I'm always curious about opportunities to have an organizational structure that's more efficient. And whenever we have those overlaps, trying to figure out, is that something that needs to be separated out? Is it something where responsibilities need to be, shifted around a little bit to make sure that everyone, as they're wearing all these hats, they're not getting burned out, they feel appreciated, and that they feel like they can get their job done, as opposed to trying to keep their head above the water as we keep pouring more in. So I guess I will look forward to hearing your insights about that in the future, and I'm very, very curious to learn more.
One thing I'll say really quickly about that is a lot of what I've done in previous lives, if you will, is lean work, is process mapping, is looking at workflows, particularly across departments, divisions, so as to figure out, where do we have waste? How might we eliminate that? Where do we have redundancies? Where do we have unnecessary handoffs? I've done a lot of that work, and it pays pretty huge dividends. You've got to get people to sort of buy in, if you will, because they will protect their domain. Or, I know we've had some conversation about, gee, should we have people spend all their budget money or not? I know that's come up. Sometimes if you have an environment like that, people are going to protect their piece, and they're not going to tell you what's inefficient about how they're operating, because they're afraid they'll lose staff or money. So there's some cultural shifts and commitments we need to make if we were going to employ tools of that sort. But that's the kind of thing you can do once an organization gets as big and as complicated as we are, because we're not really a small organization any longer. And some of those tools really could be helpful in figuring out, do people have the right balance of duties? And as we're leveling that load, do we have the right people in the right place doing the right thing?
Anyone else?
I just want to follow up on that. Just you go through the lean, the work and all that stuff. Yeah, I come from a private industry, so every single job we have, I think I mentioned many times in here, they actually list out the task, how many hours supposed to do and all that. So that is kind of basically an evaluation. And then you can look at the tasks. Well, some of these tasks may be, like you said, duplications or redundancy, or some of the time. A lot of time a computer can able to do that, right? So have you that experience? And
Yes.
okay, so I would like to see each job really describing what the tasks are. And then when you ask additional people, then you say, okay, now the volume has gone up, some justification, because I I look at the thing, I want to look at the objectively by data. But I'm not sure compare with other organizations really justified because there's a lot of organization inefficient, right? So I'm not sure that is a fair comparison. The ratio or that type of thing, to me, that's the task is more critical to me, yeah. We will have coffee sometime, yeah.
All right. I have a couple of questions. Commissioner Kenny, you talked about diversity. What specifically piqued your interest on that topic?
Well, I've been interested in diversity and South County Fire for going on 2 decades. And there are
what do you feel it's missing? I guess more.
I'm sorry,
I'm
what's
curious to
missing?
learn what you feel is missing. If there's a gap in there, or just continue.
Oh,
going on?
I don't think there's enough emphasis on it.
Okay.
I think that that we can do a lot more, and we don't talk about it much. I think there's some things that we can do here at the board around diversity, mostly in our appointment process. We don't really have a lot of opportunities because we're governed by elections and things that don't many times lend themselves nicely to being able to take into account diversity issues. But I think for the organization as a whole, we need to be talking about it. I like to say that at some point, the media is going to run some articles about the makeup of the fire service in Snohomish County, and we're the largest fire service provider. And I think they're going to find that our organization is largely male and largely white. And so, and our community is not to the percentages that it is in our workforce. And I think we need to have a story to tell about what we're doing to impact that. And I don't know that we'd have that today. I think we've made some steps in the right direction. I want to see that continue. I want to see some new ideas around that. But if in 20 years, when they write that article and we haven't changed, I think we're going to have a problem. And when they do write that article, it's going to come. Recently, in the last year, the article was written about the police departments in the county. So one day they'll write about the fire departments. What do we got to have to say? We've buried our head in the sand for the last umpteen number of years. I think we need to have a plan, and that's part of being proactive and looking ahead. So when the time comes, we do actually have a plan, something that we're doing incrementally to change things. And but it requires leadership. It requires conversation about it. And if we're not talking about it, I doubt we're doing anything about it.
Fair enough. Thank you. So
Do you mind, Chair?
just to summarize what I've heard, and then I'll hand the floor back to you. You're thinking more of representative demographics, in that the demographics that we serve, that the fire department, at least the representative staff, should look more like that. Is that what you're?
That's certainly a component of it, but actually one of the things that our last HR director brought to the table was talking about retention of minority members of our workforce. And that's the easiest way to maintain, if not increase, but maintain our diversity, is keep the people that you have, and thinking about that and how to have a culture that embraces that and facilitates that. And I just hadn't thought about that as much. So there are different pieces to this to tease out. And that's where we need an HR director that engages on that, because I don't know if there's any one right answer. I certainly don't have a right answer, but I feel like we do not pursue that issue adequately.
So there's some concerns around retention. Retention.
I don't know.
Okay. I'm just trying to clarify and understand. That's all I'm curious about. So thank you. Director Cullen.
I would sort of amend and extend, as it were, and say, I think you make really good points about the comparison of our demographics to the community we serve. I think another way to look at this in defense of South County Fire is if you look at how we compare to other fire agencies and similar agencies, just in terms of the male-female dynamic, we're doing way better than almost everybody. So that alone is notable and important, and I think laudable. It isn't enough. We could be better even on that score, but we're, I think, something like number 4 nationally when it comes to percentage of female firefighters. And our recent classes going through the academy have had even bigger percentages of female recruits. So I think on that score, we're doing pretty darn well. But you make a good point. Wherever we are and whatever benchmark we're comparing ourselves against, if we're not talking about these things, we're not going to advance. So I think that's very well taken.
Thank you, both of you. Director Cullen, you talked about leadership training. What would you consider to be the target for that?
I'm sorry, say again.
Leadership training for the budget request. What were you thinking was a target? What personnel were you thinking there?
I think captains.
Okay.
I think that's in some ways the most critical role we have in the organization. In some ways, the toughest role we've got in the organization. And the one where, to my mind, all the things that I sort of believe in terms of making sure that we're doing the right things, most of that happens to and through the relationship a captain has with her crew. So trying to figure out how to arm those folks with as many tools and resources as possible to know what they need to do and how to do it and support them in doing so would create, I think, all sorts of benefits.
Okay, thank you.
Biggest oversight expenditure in the training area. I'd like to kind of in the future kind of look or at least understand the why from where boards that. And if there's things that we're not going to officially to allow training them on people.
Is your microphone on?
My apologies, different microphones. I finally got what I wanted, a light bulb at the bottom, and now I'm not even looking at it. But to reiterate, just, looking at the budget, I saw that one of the largest expenditures as far as overtime that I saw for line items, it's almost $1 million, is in the South County Fire training. And so I would like to understand a little bit more on what drives that being, necessitating overtime, how we can fit training into, the full schedule that people already have. And if you have any creative thoughts around, just in general, how we can train people up without taking them away from their duties, but at the same time, give them time away from their duties so they can do the training.
That's exactly the challenge. That's precisely the challenge. Yes. And I think I don't know, but I think that's why training is looking that way, because we take folks and say, we need to put you in a training situation. We'll do it when you're not otherwise working for us, because our staffing is such that we need you in your regular role. And yeah, that's something we need to get better at, because it's awfully expensive. And yet those are the investments we have to make, training, but do we have to make them at that expense? Is there another way to do it?
That's it.
Thank you. You mentioned that you've been able to have casual conversations with the local 1828 and the leadership team between the president and the vice president. There was a fourth name that you used I wasn't familiar with. You said Patrick.
Yeah. Patrick McGarry.
Okay. Just curious. Thank you. And then, so do you feel that those casual conversations are going well?
Absolutely.
And it's building up trust? I know there was a friction there between your predecessor. So I was just checking in on that.
Yes. Yeah, I would honestly say, at the risk of people thinking, gosh, we're all too cozy, there is a great deal of trust, respect, collaboration, partnership. We have obligations that aren't necessarily going to have us agreeing a whole lot, but I think the foundation of how to work with each other and talk to each other is better than I've ever seen it anywhere that I've worked.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned about how with that you're able to have conversations around potential warnings of events and results. Is that being positive received as well when you have those conversations with them?
Yes.
Okay. That was all my questions. Thank you. Anybody else? All right. Thank you, Director Cullen, for your report. Chief Eastman, is there anything further on the topic?
No, not at all. Thanks. And I guess I will. From staff's perspective, at least mine personally, he's an unbelievably added value and an asset organizationally. And I guess in the past few weeks, I've had the privilege of working far closer with David than I have in the past. And I'm excited about where the future of HR goes in the organization. And he fits very, very well in this organization. I think will maintain a very good balance that will instill the trust of the employee group and also do the other things that HR needs to do in a way that will maintain that trust. So I'm looking forward to where he takes the HR division itself, but I think where we go and the things he adds, and I can tell you from the interactions we've had to date, I think once again, it's a long road and things take time and it's not something that'll happen overnight. But I think where we go, with everything we do, I'm looking forward to where he takes, that and I've enjoyed the last 3 weeks specifically. He's been a great asset to me personally, organizationally, and happy to have him here, and looking forward to where it goes. So with that, thanks, David, and your team.
Thank you. On to our new business item. Let's have one item A, City of Edmonds resolution requesting annexation with Chief Eastman.
Good evening. I guess I'm going to give just a little bit of history because I think it's just so we get everybody kind of on the same page. As you know, the City of Edmonds has, I believe it was at our when we gave the update or the state of fire to the City of Edmonds. We heard it when staff went and gave the presentation just from the specific operations perspective. And when the board and the council met and did their annual joint meeting, there was a lot of conversation about looking forward and exploring annexation options. That parlayed into staff talking to city staff. I apologize. I'm horrible with dates. I'm not Chief Hobus when it comes to that stuff. But it was a month and a half ago, I think in July, when the city council asked us for model language for a resolution requesting annexation. We had several examples, as you well know, working with, I worked with their finance director, Dave Turley. Then they brought forward a resolution to requesting annexation in July. That actually was pulled. The council had some questions about what is it, and they didn't want to move forward with requesting annexation when in their mind they were still exploring annexation. At that point in time, Chief Hobus and the mayor had some conversations, and they were talking about how did we do some of this education stuff with the City of Mill Creek, City of Briar, and City of Montlick Terrace, and Chief told them, and that led into conversations between staff, Leslie, myself, and Chief Hobus on behalf of the RFA. We had 3 different meetings, and the only council member from the City of Edmonds that was not in attendance in one of those 3 was Diane Buckness. Those meetings were attended by their finance director was at all 3 of them. The mayor was at 2 of the 3. And I want to say they had at one of the meetings, the executive assistant to the council. And we had a very, kind of the same conversations we've had with our other cities, conversations we've had about what is an RFA, you know, how is the RFA formed? You know, gave them the plan document so they had it and all those other pieces. Talked about some of the challenges that the city has faced if they're going to do that. In other words, one of the biggest questions is, what do you do with the capacity left in your general fund? They talked about the resolution and the language in the resolution, and we were clear, the RCW, according to our legal counsel, it needs to be very specific in what the language says, to trigger action on behalf of the RFA to move forward. We talked about the challenges with the contract, the challenges that we face with the contract, not only from the service level we provide the citizens of Edmonds and some of the challenges that are affiliated with that. You know, the lack of flexibility with those to meet the demands and such. Then we talked about the parity conversation where the city of Edmonds equivalent to 70 cents per thousand. And you know, the RFA residents are at $1.21. So we had those very open dialogue with them, with all three in those meetings. And at the end, which and we talked about, I think, at one of the meetings where you know, some of the things that they've talked about is they look at other agencies who can provide the service. They look at potentially starting their own service. The mayor has, I believe they've engaged Burke and Associates to do some of that work on their behalf. I think in that context, specific to what does it look like if they start their own fire department and such. So we discovered on Sunday last week that they had an agenda or a resolution to request annexation on their board meeting last Tuesday. Their original resolution had the language required. They made a couple amendments to it, which changed it from the current wording or the wording that was required in the RCW. And I think they changed it to, if I'm not mistaken, explore. Information about annexing into South County versus requesting annexation into South County. So we received that from them the following day, and obviously put in the packet for our discussion and where to go from there. And I think we've had some conversations specifically with legal counsel as to, you know, do we have to respond? What do we have to do? As I stated, the resolution, the way it's currently drafted, doesn't actually meet what the statute requires for us to actually trigger. That doesn't mean we can't engage in conversation with the city of Edmonds to request that, you know, their intent is wanting to explore annexation. And I think we've, from a staff's perspective, we want to continue that conversation with the city. But as we get to this place, that's the background of where we are and where we got to. We did have a conversation intergovernmental with regards to the resolution and potential responses to that last week. I want to say it was Thursday. And there's been some dialogue from staff and the commissioners just to fill them in on the backstory we talked about. So with that, that's kind of where we were, where we are, and now we have a resolution that the city's wanting additional information on annexation and where the board wants to go from now. I think staff's I think it's important that we continue to engage City of Edmonds. I get the resolution doesn't actually trigger something, but I think we want them to be part of the RFA and probably need to continue to move forward. How we do that, I think, is part of why we brought it before the board and want to have some conversation about that. We also know that the challenges that we currently have with existing contracts isn't gone away. It's still there. It's also a topic of conversation that we've had over the last few years with regards to our contract cities now, with two of them of the three already annexed in. That leaves Edmonds as the last one that's still under contract. And so I guess with that, I'll pause and share to start a conversation about how we want to move forward. What you'd like staff to do. Staff's prepared to do a lot of things. As you know, we've had conversations about the parity issues and the parity challenges and the contract challenges and you know, we've worked with legal counsel to be in a position to address those issues when the board's ready to address those issues. We've also have you know, Leslie has looked at this and looked at ways to respond. There's multiple different ways we can do it. This is about the citizens of Edmonds and how do we continue to provide the service that we're providing and have the flexibility to continue to provide services to meet the demand and not have the constraints of current contracts. And so I guess we're looking at a conversation to get a little bit of guidance of where you would like staff to go and how you would like us to move forward with this. And I think with that, I'll pause. And Chair, I'll give it back to you to start that part of the conversation.
Thank you, commissioners. Vice Chair Rowland.
So question for you. I understand the wording change doesn't comply with, I guess maybe this is also a question for Rich Davis. It doesn't comply with the statute. Let's just, for the sake of argument, say that they hadn't amended it and that they had passed it and it was completely compliant with the statute. What action would that trigger? What would we start doing? What's the next step there? Let's start with that.
So, and Richard, if you want to start, I'll let you start and I'll add in.
Sure. So when you get a resolution requesting annexation into the RFA, the governing board is to adopt a resolution amending its RFA plan to provide the terms and conditions for the city that wants to annex in. That resolution is approved by the governing board of the RFA along with the amended RFA plan and is sent back to the city in order to hold an election within the city to either approve or reject the annexation measure. I should say that, you know, we did provide the city with the technical language that would trigger the governing board's obligation. One of the things that the governing board here could do is ignore the technical deficit and proceed to amend its RFA plan and send it back with a resolution like we would in any other case where annexation had been formally requested and with a deadline for that measure to be put on the ballot at the city. And if it's not put on the ballot within that time, then the RFA plan amendment that you had approved is null and void, right? That is one thing that could be done. You could just say, we don't care that it doesn't technically comply with the statute. We're going to ignore that. Because what their resolution really says is we want more information. And the more information could be, well, here's what it would look like, you know, if you were to annex in. If you wish to proceed, you can put it on the ballot and you need to do so by this date. Otherwise, that discussion's off the table and the plan is null and void. So that I did want to add that as one of the options that you could consider.
So I guess my next question was going to be, if we were to do that, what are the risks? Is it something where if they did pass it, goes to the ballot, somebody could challenge it because the language wasn't right? I mean, to dot our I's and cross our T's, we'd want them to pass a resolution that complied at some point during this process. You know, we'd prefer it right now, but
the reason
lined up, right?
Right. The reason that you want to require that language from the statute is, number one, that's what the statute says. And number two, it shows that the city really wants to annex in. They're making an official request. And so then the RFA can undertake the process, which, you know, takes a little bit of time, takes some legal work to amend the RFA plan. But to answer your specific question, let's suppose we ignore the technicalities and we just send back a resolution here's an amended RFA plan. What are the risks? I don't think anybody could challenge on that basis. The statute provides a very limited basis for challenge, and that is not one of them. I think the fact that, you know, the plan was amended and it was approved by the voters, if, you know, if that happens, I think it's pretty much immune from attack. So I don't really think there's any risk if the governing board decided to do that.
So I'll add that some of the amendment of the RFA plan, there's a pre-annexation agreement. There's a conversation that would need to have. So example, if we treat this as it's good to go and we're going to move forward like we did with everybody else, we would meet with the mayor, sit down, start, you know, Richard and his team would start the basic template of amending the plan. He's done it 3 times in the last couple of years. They're pretty much the same. We'd have to deal with issues like, what do we do with Edmonds left one liability because they still have it. Historically, that transfers. You know, their stations in our perspective right now, their stations land and property come to the RFA just like all the other ones did. We know, you know, that we have an issue with Station 17 because it's part of their complex, very similar to Montlake Terrace. And there's other nuances. I don't know if they have any pre-left one liability, that the fireman's pension fund liability. So there's other pieces like that that we'd have to work through that would require some conversation with the city to actually, you know, either put in the pre-annexation agreement or have Richard and his team put in the amended plan, such, and they sometimes overlap, sometimes they don't. The pre-annex agreement is easy because if they don't pass, we already have a contract with them. The difference though is very similar to what we did with the city of Montlake Terrace. Well, we did it with the city of Briar. We did not do it with the city of Montlake Terrace. Is with the city of Briar, if you remember, when we did the pre-annexation agreement, we actually amended the cost of the agreement and went down a path of parity. So if the city of Briar wasn't successful at the ballot and they went back subsequently and wasn't successful at the ballot and the contract expired at the end of 2025 or four, that they would continue to have service under a contract, they would be paying the parity rate. And we defined what that was. We can calculate the benefit charge and what our mill rate is for fire and what our mill rate is for EMS. So for me, I wouldn't treat Edmonds different in that category. I think that opens up the opportunity in a pre-annexation agreement, if they're not successful, that we address the parity challenges that we all know as part of that conversation. You know, with both the city of Briar and the city of Montlake Terrace in those discussions, once we went forward as a form of just because the contracts, we actually gave them official termination notices as part of those conversations with them. And so not only did we talk about the contracts and readdress how it was going to be done with the city of Briar, so the termination of the contract was really not needed because we knew what the terms were going to be if we continued a contract relationship with them. In the case of Montlake Terrace, they did not want to renegotiate the terms, but we gave them the termination notice, so they knew that the contract was expiring, was not going to be renewed, and they all knew why. They just didn't want to tie those renegotiations in because they were all in to pass the RFA, right? Pass the RFA. So there are some things we did with the city of Briar, the city of Montlake Terrace specifically last year when we went on this conversation that I think staff at least would start going down some very similar paths with the city of Edmonds if we were to move forward with this as a result. Obviously, those all come back and, you know, the final decision on all those documents is you, the board, and then ultimately, once you guys approve them, then the city would. So there's other pieces outside of what Richard was talking about of the formal. Our response is amend the plan, approve the resolution. That's our way of saying, yes, you can annex in. What I'm talking about is the pieces to get us there, and some of the nuances, specifically what we did with Montlake Terrace and Briar, because we did it different. Yep. And the one big difference is both of their contracts are expiring at the end of 24. versus the city of Edmonds, which their current 20-year term expires in 2030. Right? So those are some of the pieces that would be, in my opinion, part of those conversations. Because I think I mean, I've been in enough conversations with the board in this venue to realize we do have to address the parity issue as we have this conversation. However that's done, we can't not address it. That's just, it's not realistic. Now, how that's addressed and when that gets addressed and all that, you know, staff will do some legwork, and then obviously the board gives the direction of how that works.
I'm glad you brought that up. I do want to say that if you haven't had a chance to watch the video of the meeting, you know, take it's about 30 minutes, I think, that whole section, maybe a little bit longer, to get the flavor of the conversation. One of the things that I did want to, I guess, on the record kind of correct is there was I guess an implication at the beginning when the city was being briefed that these termination notices that we had sent to Briar Mount Lake Terrace were a way to start the conversation, and that was by no means my understanding of it or anything. That was just because you have to end a contract to you know, bring them in, and that was coordinated with them. So I'd want to make sure that, you know, we take the same strategy so that it doesn't feel, again, I just don't want it to come across as it's some sort of an ultimatum. That having been said, the whole purpose of the way that the contract was written was to remain fair to both sides. And we know that, you know, costs have changed, the amount of staffing that they had has increased, and that's good for the residents there. But, you know, the whole idea wasn't that they would get a good deal, even if it ended up meaning that they would be paying less than parity. And so I think that it's been a while. When I first started here, I heard a lot of the word subsidize get thrown around a lot. And it's a loaded phrase, but at the same time, I mean, we do have to acknowledge, and I'm sure they have to acknowledge that it wouldn't be fair if their residents were paying $1 while the entire RFA was paying 70 cents on the dollar. So we have a responsibility to our constituents to rectify this, not wait 6 years where they're paying extra so that, you know, one of the contracts that, again, the reason we have the termination clauses in there is if we started charging them out the wazoo, they could get out because it wouldn't be fair to them. But I don't think that that's what we're asking for. So I think we can definitely have those conversations, given that we're in the middle of an election season. We don't know in a month what that board is going to look like. So I think we should tread lightly just to make sure that we understand the lay of the ground. And that's kind of my comments.
Thank you, Vice Chair Rowland. Commissioner Lawrence, you have your hand up.
Yes, yeah, this contract was underperforming the date it was signed. That was a poorly written contract. And the rest of the RFA has been subsidizing Edmonds for how many years now? How many decades? It can't go on. I got on one reason I got on the board here is to stop that from happening. I wasn't happy to know about that. I knew about it for many years. And I wanted to send a termination notice right from my day one here on the board. But no, we can't do that. They got to be nice. I mean, all sorts of ridiculous stuff. This could have been over long ago. Okay, well, there are some reasons to continue on now that Briar's in, Mount Lake Terrace is in. But my recollections of since before I was on the board and during the board, my time on the board, was a disingenuous approach on, they know they're getting a good deal, 75%, 25% discount for what we've been doing. They've been subsidized heavily. It's not a euphemism. It's not just a phrase. It's a meaningful that they've been subsidized heavily. So it wasn't a full unanimous board vote. And a key phrase from Chief Eastman was, Mount Lake Terrace and Briar were all in. Edmonds is not all in. And so this termination, whatever, I think that the staff, I mean, they know about it. They know it's not something we do to beat them in the submission to then get the vote. It's just, do they want, they saying now their vote, they want to join the RFA, or they want to look into it, or do they want to join? I'm a little confused about that. What did they vote on? That they want to join, or they just want to maybe look into it? Just one word answer on that, Chief Eastman. Or 2 words.
I think it's mixed. Some do, some don't, and some just want to get more information.
Okay, this sounds like, once again, they're gonna have a new election. I thought we were waiting till after the election to go on, but okay, so you got, what was the vote again there at the council? City council?
4-3.
The current resolution was passed 4-3.
4-3. I mean, it's dicey. I mean, hey, you can't blame them. I mean, hey, let's get the good deal here. So we need to move on, and we needed to give them the 2-year notice right now. And if that's part of the deal. They know that's kind of part of the deal. When they've indicated they want 4-3. They want to join the RFA, not just look into it. 4-3. 4 of them want to join the RFA. Is that correct? What was your answer just a second ago?
Well, I think knowing how they changed the resolution, and I will tell you, when Leslie and I in chief met with the council people we did, and like I said, Diane Buckshus was the only one that we did not meet with. This was a topic of conversation and a question they asked us specifically, because they wanted, when they had their resolution on the agenda and they pulled it without taking action, they really wanted to say, we're not requesting annexation because we don't have all the information yet. So we don't know if that's what we want to do, which is why they amended it. And they knew, because of the conversation that Leslie Thad and I had with them, they also, Mr. Turley knew what the statute said. Their legal counsel at the council meeting said, this may take away the intent of what the resolution's designed to do. So they knew. So to answer your question,
another disingenuous response. There's somehow the city of Edmonds keeps electing people that I guess they're smart. Yeah, well, let's soak the RFA. They've been doing it for too long. We just need to just give them the 2-year notice, and then we'll take care of business. I don't know. This is phony baloney business once again from Edmonds, that we're subsidizing them. My neighbors and I and the RFA now, Mount Lake Terrace and Briar, you guys are subsidizing Edmonds, big tune here. So let's get off the pot and give them the 2-year notice. This is another disingenuous reply from Edmonds. So anyway, I guess I get off my soapbox now.
Thank you, Commissioner Lawrence. We'll go to Commissioner Chan and then Liaison Swisher.
Yeah, I have a little different approach. I don't think we should really judging what the other organization. I don't think I don't use the words disingenuous or whatever. I think that's the same thing if somebody say about South County Fire. I will reject that. But I do kind of come to the same direction on the positive way. Today, we just talked about capital facility plan, right? I think we need to bring them in earlier, not earlier, but for the Station 20. They're in desperate repair, okay? And I do want us to get our capital facility plan going, and want to keep on waiting, because if you don't fix that station, it's going to cost more money than it is. So I just like to get them involved earlier and look at positive way and to get the thing going. But this is also too, this is the first annexation, but this is our third annexation in 2 years, right? So we know the process. They may not understand it. I definitely, I encourage the staff, give them as much information as possible, just like Briar has and all that, and then get them. But the ultimate, since they pass a resolution, the ultimate decision is for the citizen, for the resident who vote for it, right? So I think, to me, I'm really happy with, Mercantile is 76%, and then Briar and the other one come 90%.
You mean Mill Creek?
Yeah, no, Briar and then Monica.
Right, you said Muckleteo, but you mean Mill Creek?
Yeah, sleeping, Mill Creek. Which I think, I've been working on Mill Creek, Mercantile for a long time too. The free M. So we got 2 M's now. We got 1 more M to go. So I think that's a much more friendlier, more positive way to convince the citizens in there. I do not want to hate using the word subsidize, whatever, because that's what it was when we first started with all the contract city. Because final goal is to merge with us. So I'm for the normal response and not taking exception. And we just go as we go. And then they're gonna take there's a lot more, it's gonna take a while, right? For you to answer the questions and how do the apparatus and all that stuff.
To be honest, we've been able to do it relatively quickly with the 3 cities that we've already done it, right?
Right.
And so I can't answer that question because I don't know.
Right. No, but if there are more questions, that would take more
Yeah,
time.
no, I think
totally understand that.
staff is willing to answer whatever questions anybody, quite frankly, who wants to learn about what does it mean to regionalize, we're open to do that with anybody. Edmonds is a true partner of ours. They've been a partner of ours since 2010.
Right.
And we're treating them as a partner of ours, and
Right.
staff will continue to give the information to their staff as they need it. And that it's just, they've done some things that have now come to the attention of the board, and this conversation is warranted as a result. The one thing that I didn't talk about is, if you haven't looked at the mayor's proposed budget, he was published yesterday. And if you look at page 6 of his budget, and if you guys don't mind, I'm going to read it because I think it tells you at least where the mayor and where the mayor is with regards to this. And it says, beyond the 2024 budget, fire and EMS services, nothing is more important than protecting the health and safety, your health and safety. The city has had a contract for many years with South County Fire for paramedics, EMS, and fire service. Unfortunately, the cost of these services is increasing at an unsustainable rate. In the last 2 years, it has increased approximately $4 million. We've brought this to the attention of the city council, but the majority of them refuse to take action. Without council action soon, we risk losing fire and EMS services to our community. It is my belief that you, the voters, should have a say on this critical life-saving service. I want to alert our residents to this important issue and remain hopeful that the council will work on this in the coming months. That's actually in the mayor's budget memo or budget address. And I thought it was important because we talk about, the council changed some things. There are some positive things, and you have a mayor right now who has been very clear to staff that he wants to move forward on annexation. And you're seeing what he put in his budget document is not just him telling us to do it. He's now putting actions and words in a document. I think that's important for us to know as we continue. They've had conversations in the city. They know they need to explore it. They know where they need to go. And some know less, some know more. And we've done this with enough cities to know you get that until people get comfortable, and you got some in the city that aren't comfortable yet. And you've got the current mayor of the city pushing it, and all those other pieces. So that's a piece I wanted to make sure you knew.
Well, I think along the way, I attend the debate on the mayor of there, and all 4 of them was the first priority. This is exactly this, on the health and wellness of the citizens. And same as Briar, as I heard them some of the council member did their own experience that they want the service important to them. So I will go along with what our attorney, Rich suggestions, just go ahead and send back the resolutions and get the ball moving positively.
All right, so this is an excerpt from that link. Actually, I was looking to share, Lori, the website that has it. Can you promote me to share, do a screen share? And then
I do want to say that while we get this set up, that if you do listen to it, the wording change, I mean, the intent is there as if the wording wasn't changed, but I think they're just, the statute has very strong language where we're requesting it. It's like, you know, requesting a car or to buy a car, but until you actually go through the whole paperwork and everything, you haven't bought it yet. But I think they're just being careful that they do a measured approach, and I appreciate that they're doing that for the residents.
so this is what Chief Eastman read. This is page 8 of the City of Edmonds proposed budget for 2024. Liaison Swisher, you have the floor.
Well, I probably have the most experience with having to go through this process. One of the things that I found most considerate of the RFA was the letter that we received a year early from Chief Hovis telling us that this was coming and that we needed to prepare for it. Because it pretty much took me that whole year to get our council all on board. I had people who told us we were special. We are not special. We are a unique community, but when it comes to receiving fire service, none of us are special. We all are looking for the exact same service, which is if you pick up that phone and you dial 911, the people who you need are going to show up. There's a cost for that service. And I made this statement many times to my own council as I tried to get them on board. It's just like buying car insurance, health insurance, home insurance. You buy that hoping that you'll never have to use it. It's the same thing with our fire service. We all need to pay what it takes to have that service available. And we all hope to God we never have to dial 911 and have somebody come out. But the reality of it is, at some point, either us or someone close to us will need that service one way or another, whether it's a house on fire, whether it is an EMS incident. Working with Edmonds now, even though the resolution doesn't say the right thing, you have two people sitting right there that were instrumental in helping me to get all the information that I needed to put in front of our council. It's great to hear that Edmonds has already signed on with Burke. Burke's report of our city finances and where we would be if we didn't take action was huge in helping people to move forward. Because even though I sat there telling them, hey, I've been here for a few years, I know what we're in for, and we're going to run out of money if we don't do this, there were people who looked at me and they didn't come right out and say they didn't believe me, but they didn't want to take my word for it. And we had Burke come in and they gave their presentation. And magically people went, oh, you mean we're not going to have the money? We're going to be broke in a couple of years. And it helped us turn the corner. But you have to approach them with all the information. I mean, even I would say to a certain degree, bombard them with the information about what it takes to provide this service, because I will say that knowing what Breyer was paying, if I had been someone that lived directly across the street from the Breyer city limits, and I had heard that the guy across the street was paying this amount and I was paying more than double, as your taxpayers, I'd be pissed. And when you came to me for another vote because you needed money for something, whether it's facilities, whether it's, just because of inflation, I would have a hard time giving you a yes vote, knowing that you were leaving money on the table with somebody else who was taking advantage of, granted, great contracts. We all had great contracts. We did. And we got to keep them for a lot of years, probably more years than we should have. Give Edmonds the information, but if you're seeing that you can't provide them the service that is necessary, give them that 2-year notice. Make them make the move, because you are setting yourself up, whether they decide to go back to having their own fire department or whether they decide to go to the voters and ask them to join the RFA. You are putting yourself in a position that the rest of your constituents will give you a no vote if they know that you've left money sitting on the table with the city of Edmonds and not pushed that envelope a little harder. You don't have to be nasty about it. You can do it in a nice way and try to give them all the information, but you can't, if you're already behind the 8 ball like that with them, you can't give them another 6 years. It will not benefit you, because as we've already talked, you've got 2 votes that you feel you need to take to your constituents within the next, 5 years. You're not going to get what you need if you have not told the people who are receiving services for less that they have to step up and do what the rest of us have done. Just my 2 cents.
Thank you. Commissioner Kenny, because you haven't gone yet, and then Commissioner Lawrence.
Chief Eastman, for the ballot measure it would take for Edmonds to vote into the RFA, are there validation concerns regarding that for that type of a vote in 2025?
No, it's a simple majority vote, no validation requirement. And Rich, I want to make sure I'm right. I'm getting a nod. So yeah, no validation requirement.
Okay. I think I like the idea of moving forward as if they had said the fully yes. The naysayers, from what I am aware, are not hell no. They're just thinking about delay. So I think overall, the council as a whole and the mayor are supportive. So let's try and move forward. They may want to slow the process down, but in the process of responding back as we would normally, if they want particularly more information or they take longer, so be it. We can only go as fast as they go, but it seems to make sense to push forward. And because doing it in 2024 would make a lot of sense. But I would let things play out for a while here in 2023 prior to providing, and I think we should have more discussion here at the board prior to providing a termination notice. That's kind of a big deal on a contract that's been around a long time. And I think we want to have more notice of that and just have more transparency around it. Not that I'm opposed to it, but just I think I'd like to see the process of responding back positively to this positive event from Edmonds. I'm impressed that it happened so soon, right in the election season. It's good. So I think we look at it as the opportunity that it is. and try and push forward, because vote in 2024 would be good for Edmonds and would be good for South County Fire.
Thank you. Commissioner Lawrence?
Yes, our liaison from Briar was eloquent to the point. Appreciate that wisdom. And we have to tackle this Edmonds thing. They're gonna have an election here soon. Doubtful. I mean, who knows who would be mayor? There might be the 4-3 against moving ahead. They may change their vote. Then what are we going to do? So I hear Commissioner Kenny definitely very soon after their election that we have to know if they're on board. Do they really want to join? And that they know why we would be doing, just like Briar, Mount Lake Terrace, they would know why we're doing the 2-year notice. It's just part of something we have to do and to make everything work. So, but it's got to be done really quick. But I'm all for doing it right now, but definitely some words of wisdom there from Commissioner Kenny, but not too much longer. Thank you.
Vice Chair Rowland?
I do want to say thank you, Commissioner Lawrence. I know your passion comes from a really good place. And the fact of the matter is we don't have people speaking.
Comes from my pocketbook.
Just like our constituents. We don't have a lot of people coming in, talking during public comment, bringing these things forward. You know, as commissioners, we need to keep our ears to the ground. Commissioner Lawrence, said it, I think, as well as one of our constituents would, had they had the opportunity to speak. So, that being said, it's kind of a weird aside, but I don't watch baseball that much. I used to watch it a little bit more when I was a kid, and I was sitting in a restaurant and it was on the TV, and I noticed they had shot clocks now in baseball because they would take forever to get into the box and the game would drag on, and those shot clocks just let them know that, hey, we got to get to the end goal, and so I definitely would support setting up some sort of shot clock, as the termination is 2 years. It's a long runway for them. Maybe early next year, but I want to make sure that we're cultivating it. We're working side by side with them. But at a certain point, we are going to have to cut bait and decide that this is, where we need to start moving. I look forward to the continued talks. And I hope they get all the information they need to understand the value proposition that we're bringing. The one thing I did want to address is, the mayor talked about the fact that there was the $4 million increase. The increases, we all know that Edmonds had artificially short-staffed one of their stations, and we had spent years trying to get that properly staffed. And as part of that, the cost goes up when you add, more headcount so that we have enough people to take care of the Edmonds residents there. So I want to thank the Edmonds City Council for taking that step. Seeing that number increase, may not be popular, but knowing that you're getting the service that you really need to be able to have that 61% survivability rate for heart attacks, it means something. So I think we have a positive direction. And like I said, from the video, I think that, while they're still looking at other options, just as our other contract cities did, they appreciate the value we bring, and they're interested to see if annexation is the logical next step.
So thank you, Vice Chair Rowland. I have a few questions. So we were working on Station 22. We had a presentation earlier. Next year, if we were to go for a general obligation bond, Edmonds would be excluded from paying into that, correct?
Yeah, I mean, right now, Edmonds would not pay. You don't have the authority to tax anybody in the city limits of Edmonds. So, if we did any initiative, EMS levy, general levy don't. If we did debt service or went to debt service or voter approved debt for our capital, if we did it at a time that Edmonds was not part of the RFA, the city of Edmonds residents wouldn't pay. Now, I want to give the caveat that there is a way to do debt service. If the city of Edmonds is agreement, you can do an ILA that's a city of Edmonds, you get the debt and the city of Edmonds pays you for what you're purchasing to do things in the city of Edmonds. So for example, so there is a way to do it with them not in the RFA for them to pay their share of the debt. But to be honest with you, it's not done very often, but I want to let everybody know, because you asked the question, there is a way. But for us to levy taxes with the city of Edmonds, they have to be officially annexed into RFA. And so in our Wednesday work or our Friday workshop, we talked about, and CFO Bothwell is going to bring that forward at one of the, I don't know if it's the next meeting or the meeting after, and you're going to see debt service, a voted debt initiative for capital inserted in 2026. So in order for the timeline that we talked about hypothetically, you know, and kind of the guidance of where we're going, you want then the city of Edmonds to be part of the RFA by August of 2025, no later than. So we levy taxes with them in 26. So when we go do debt service in 26, city of Edmonds is actually paying it too. Once again, it complicates it because if the city of Edmonds comes in 25 versus 24, we all had that conversation recently. We've just brought into two contract cities, and you know, we're conscientious of the folks that become us because they were us. We treated them as us before they became us. And so, you know, when we go do tax initiatives, you know, our in the conversations we've had, we're not really keen, appropriately so, to say, come join us, and then you come in August, and then the following year we're going to increase your taxes. That's not who we are. And so there's other things that you got to take into account. If they come later, I will say the conversation will come up in 2026. Do you do that if Edmonds comes in 2025 or anybody comes in 2025, right? Those are conversations that will influence my opinion on where the board decides to go before the voters. All that is pieces that you will consider as you go. And in our conversation on Friday, right, we talked about doing an EMS levy in 24, and you know, the board almost as a whole, we're not interested in doing that because our cities of Briar and Montlake Terrace annexed in, and you treat them like they're already your taxpayers and didn't do that. So there's other pieces to consider when you do that, just from our long-term strategy, right? It's the, you know, I will tell you from all that assigned, you know, it would be in a perfect world, if we're only concerned with the RFA, is to have the contract addressed by the end of 2025, right? I mean, if I work everything backwards based on what we're looking at strategically moving forward, based on our conversation on the Friday workshop, you know, from staff's thinking that, once again, selfishly us, just looking at the RFA from a very selfish perspective, that's what's best for us. That doesn't necessarily mean that's best for the citizens we serve in Edmonds, but you know, those are things we'll look at. So does that answer what you were asking? And I gave you a little bit more because I think there's additional things we can do. So it's not just a black and white.
You gave me a lot more, so thank you. Also, I wanted to address the $4 million that the Vice Chair Rowland, that the mayor mentioned about, was a result of a remediation letter that the RFA sent. So it wasn't something that they did of their own accord. It was, hey, we have the data points, you're understaffing, and so they were forced to get on the ball.
Sure.
So also want to say that over the summer, there was the 21st legislators did an engagement with the public there in downtown Edmonds, on the waterfront at the new, it used to be the senior center, now it's some other facility. But one of the things that I observed when I went there was that the engine there, 17 in downtown Edmonds, responded to an elderly person that needed some aid right there in front of the train station there. I think it's Dayton. And what ended up happening was that that person was walking to this event, and the engine ended up giving them a ride to the event, all of 2 blocks. Point being is that that creates risk in that, because that person tied up station 17, if somebody else was having a heart attack, then they would have had to pull a paramedic either from station 20 or 16, which is even further away than downtown. So they do have an aging community. That is one thing to consider. In addition, on Thursday of last week, I was driving northbound on Highway 99. I was stopped at 196 and 99, and I watched engine 18 go across into west into Edmonds, away just past James Village. 18, as I understand it, is in Briar. So again, that creates risk. That means that Briar didn't have a paramedic, didn't have staff, because they were responding to an incident west of James Village there in 196. So when we're looking at the overall board of risk assessment and where stations are in use and so forth, so that means that if a citizen in Briar needed fire EMS, then they would have had to rely on station 19, maybe 22, or possibly Surfer or Bothell, if I understand correctly, the overall mutual aid agreement for that geographic location. So I know that they're doing a Burke study, and my understanding is that a preliminary publish will be in November, and a full publish will be in December, available to the council and the city. What is the commissioner's thoughts to the point of Liaison Swisher with that 1-year soft notice? If we did maybe a couple months soft notice, and that we're interested at the end of the calendar year doing a 2-year notice, what does the commissioners feel about that?
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioner Lawrence. Vice Chair Rowland.
I don't think at this stage is quite necessary. I think we've communicated so far, and I'm sure staff will communicate. They have access to this recording. There's nothing, that they don't already know that doing that would, I think, help with. So I don't think it's necessary at this point. That having been said, after the election's over and we know where the chips lay, we can make sure that we deliver that message with the audience in mind, and figure out what next steps are.
Anyone else? Commissioner Kenny, Commissioner Chan?
Good.
No comments about a soft letter saying that we're interested in maybe doing a 2-year notice in December this year?
No, I think we should do it now.
You think we should do a 2-year notice now?
So, yeah,
Okay.
because we respond to that.
Can you put your mic on, please?
Yeah, we should respond now. If they have a resolution, we respond immediately.
The question was whether we should tell them that we're going to give them 2 years notice.
Yes, we should. Because there's a whole process. I don't want to take any exception. Basically, this is our routine, and that's what we send to them.
Amen.
So you want to send a 2-year notice tonight?
Yeah.
Okay.
They just tell them this is a part of the process, right? So by the time it takes 2 years to get them ready, get integrated and everything else. Yep.
David Chan for president.
I want to speak of the House first, okay?
Too bad.
There you go.
All right.
Well, I thought the whole tenor of this conversation was just the opposite. So I don't support, let me just be clear. I don't support sending a termination letter or a letter implying we're going to terminate. I support responding back positively, having our staff and or our intergovernmental committee work with and liaise with Edmonds and figure out over the balance of this quarter towards the end of the year what we need to do. And if in that process, sometime later in this quarter, there needs to be a termination letter, we should talk about it again here at the board. But if it comes for a vote right now, I'm voting no on a termination letter.
Okay. Commissioner Lawrence.
Yeah, the 4 that voted for it, they know what's the score is. And the other 3 that voted against, they know continuing the game playing, the getting the paying 75% for what other paid dollar for. Yeah, no, we need to do it like you say, this is immediate. We respond, just like David said, because it's our normal way of doing things. It's the four that want it. Hopefully they'll get reelected and things will move along smoothly. And maybe it's one of those three people that voted against it will get unelected, and we'll get a fifth person on it that's sincere and on board and isn't playing games. And we need to move on, move ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Commissioner Cannon
I
and
guess
Vice
I'm
Chair Wong.
open-minded. Commissioner Kenny convinced me. Maybe not wait until, but maybe you should respond to them just verbally and say,
Okay, David Champ, dog catcher.
it's just diplomatic, right? And just saying that we're going to do this coming so they don't have a shock.
We'll continue the messaging we have. Staff's been very, very
Right.
transparent and has had conversations with regard to the issue we're talking about and the challenge that needs to be resolved. And we will continue having those dialogue. And they hear us when we say it, both at least the time we had with the council in August, and their staff knows. So staff will continue to continue to have the conversation, and we're not speaking on a term. We're not saying anything's going to be done, right? That's the decision of the board, but this needs to be rectified, and it's one of those things, and continues. And I'm sure if there's not already people watching, there will be people that will watch this and get the context of the conversation we're having tonight and understand. We told them it's a roving two-year deal. It doesn't go to 2030. Their staff told them the same thing. So like I said, staff will go. We just needed to make sure we have this conversation so we knew where to go at the end of the day.
Yeah,
So-
downgrading the termination part of it, and also too, on the positive side, the better we help them to station all that stuff.
No, we're all
You
good
know how to
with,
sell,
we're all good with those things.
not sell. You knew how to convince people.
Here, Daniels, would you like to make a motion so we could just have discussion and vote on this thing?
Vice Chair Rowland wanted to make a comment for.
Yeah, we're not gonna make a motion.
Go ahead, I can make a comment if we make a motion and we're in debate, but otherwise, I think it's been said.
I think we'll wait.
Give me a minute, I lost my train of thought, so.
Okay, Commissioner Fernahoff, you have remained quiet on this topic the entire time. Do you have any input, especially as the chair of the intergovernmental committee?
Exactly. I think all the arguments are really valuable, and I see the path forward as steps. Step one, we need to acknowledge the resolution 1531. As Commissioner Kenny has said, that's a standard operating procedure that we need to reply to it. And I like Rich's comment, just to ignore the language, move forward, respond. We can keep as a step two the letter that Leslie has generated in terms of termination after the election has revealed itself in terms of who the new players are. It won't change either way. It's just about timing. They will get a termination notice at some point, but I think after we let the dust settle, in a manner of speaking, for the election, that will be suitable. But a reaction to this resolution, I believe, is what we're talking about.
Okay.
I have spoken.
Sounds like a line from the Mandalorian.
It's a middle, yeah.
Vice Chair Rowland, have you had enough time to collect your thoughts?
All I was gonna say is that, as we've seen, even with some of the other annexations, votes can shift. So we do want to be cognizant of the effect that we could have on people that, they may be 4-3 today, but it could be 3-4 tomorrow. When we were looking at, I think it was with Breyer, I can't remember if it was Breyer or Mount Lake Terrace, it was 5-2, and then after one meeting, it went to 4-3. So we kind of lost some of the confidence and we gained it back. So I just want to make sure that we're doing things in a positive way that makes sure that we don't, either alienate incoming or retaining board members or ones that are swing votes. At the end of the day, I think we're all trying to do what's right by our constituents. They want a good deal because, it helps save their constituents money. We want to make sure that the constituents, here are paying their fair share and not paying someone else's as well. So I think we all have the same goals. at the end of the day, we're going to have to find that middle ground, and I think that is annexation. So, and I think they just don't want to, maybe they didn't want to say that we're requesting annexation because they didn't want a termination right at that point because they hadn't made up their mind completely because they don't have all the facts. So I think, again, if you haven't watched the video, that's the sense that I got is we do have other options that we're exploring. We don't want to say, yes, we're going with, annexation. And they felt like the language requesting annexation was too strong because it was a definite. And again, it is a statutory thing. They just wanted to soften the language up so that they didn't, maybe there are other options. They didn't want to alienate some of those conversations or end them. So I don't know what the real reasons behind some of it was. But at the end of the day, I think that we're moving in the right direction.
Okay.
So maybe I'll say that I haven't watched the video. I will like go and watch it. So if you make a motion today, I will vote no. But if you give me a little time, maybe on the third meeting, we might want to proceed, whatever. I'm not ready to vote today. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay. I make a motion that we have our PIO send a letter to them to the city of Edmonds that we are seriously considering a 2-year notification and that we don't know a date upon that, but that that be communicated in writing that we're looking into that. Seconded by Commissioner Lawrence. Is that right? All right. Any discussion on the motion?
I just want to make sure I understood you correctly. You want to send a letter, not without a definitive date that says basically that we will be at some point sending a termination notice. Is that correct, sir?
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
So moving forward with their resolution, but then also
I don't think we need a motion to go ahead to send a letter and start doing.
Well, his motion is to go ahead and tell them that we're intending to terminate. The conversation seemed to be different, so we have a second, so I guess we're in debate.
yes.
All right.
I'm not sure we need to do that. I really let the staff handle the relationship part of it. And send a letter saying that, yeah, we'll thank you for the vote, thank you, we will process it. We don't need to, there's no time limit, we need to respond right away. To me.
Liaison Swisher and then Commissioner Kenny.
I will tell you that our council would have taken some of it more serious sooner had it come from you guys. No offense, Bob. They didn't like Bob as the speaker. They didn't think that he was the person authorized necessarily to speak on your behalf and tell us that 2-year notice was coming and that, we needed to think about this seriously. They wanted something from you guys. And it wasn't until, you guys got involved that some of them went, maybe this is serious. Maybe we do need to look at it a little deeper and take this seriously, that they're really not going to give us an option. And just for the record, we called around having, the notice that we were going to get the termination. We called around and asked other people. Everybody else was higher. There is nobody in our area that can provide fire service at the rate that you guys offered and at the service times that you guys offered. So, you're prolonging the pain. And I'm not saying you need to send them a letter that tells them you're going to terminate today. I think the waiting until after the election and, as you approach the end of this year, but right now you need to acknowledge their resolution, that you've received it. And I think saying that, the potential of that 2-year notice coming sooner rather than later is on the table, because whether it's the current sitting council or new people who get elected in November, they all need to be completely aware that you guys have to do what's necessary to take care of all the constituents of the RFA, not just keep giving Edmonds a great deal. That was the same message we got. That was the same message that Mount Lake Terrace got. Unfortunately, that is just how it works. And, you know, they're just like the rest of us. You got to make some tough choices. I mean, if they think they're sitting on the money to put their own fire department back together, more power to them. But they're not going to find somebody else who can provide service to their citizens for cheaper than you guys do. Just my 2 cents that, you know, they need to hear it from the board. They don't need to just hear it from staff, because that doesn't hold as much water. You guys are the authority.
With that being said, whose signature do you think should appear on that letter? Fire chief or the chair of the board?
Chair of the board.
Yeah, that would be my
2 cents.
deal too. Yeah.
Thank you.
Because it needs to say that it's coming from you guys.
Okay, thank you.
Briar, liaison, what is your name? I can't see it there.
Paula Swisher.
Paula Swisher.
Paula, okay. Paula for president.
Commissioner Kenny, you had your hand up.
Yes, yeah, I don't support the motion. Edmonds sends us a letter saying, you know, we're excited. We want to investigate more about joining the RFA. And our response is, we're letting you know we're terminating the contract. I mean, it's like we're applauding that with a negative letter. It's like, that doesn't make any sense. I'm not sure why they're pushing forward during the political season. Clearly, it's benefiting somebody politically. But if it's benefiting somebody politically, then it's hurting somebody politically. I don't know why we want to get involved in Edmonds politics a month before the election, because whoever it's not benefiting might win, and they might not be so excited about what we're doing and weighing in during the election season. Why not wait until the politics are over, figure out who's won and who's lost, talk behind the scenes with those folks, figure out what they're thinking. The money is the same regardless of who wins or loses. And in the past, it's all about the money. That doesn't change. But if you bruise people's egos right before the election and turn this into an election football, you might hurt ourselves with the people that matter a lot. And that's the voters of Edmonds, who will have to vote on this and approve it at some point. And so if we antagonize advocates who go out and criticize what we're doing here right before the election, when people are starting to pay attention. Remember, the average voter hasn't even really thought about Edmonds politics. They're starting to think about it now. And if somebody wants to make an issue out of it because we responded to their constructive outreach to us about, hey, we'd like to investigate joining the RFA, and you responded saying, we're terminating our contract, or we're strongly going to look at terminating the contract by the end of the year. It's just like, slap them in the face. It's like, I mean, that's just, it's a bad business from my point of view. So I think that there is time to get where we need to go, but we're falling in a trap by operating right before the election. This is not the time to do it. And I'll ask the question of, the mayor is supportive of this. What about Mr. Rosen? I haven't heard anybody here say, what's his position on this? Because he might be the mayor come January 1st. What does he think? And it's really hard to pass anything like this over the objection of the mayor, particularly in a strong mayor form of government like Edmonds. So what does Mr. Rosen think? That matters a lot. We could figure that out by the end of this quarter, but we're not going to figure it out in the next 5 minutes. So I just caution you, don't make unforced errors.
Thank you, Commissioner. We'll go with Commissioner Fernhoff and then Vice Chair Rowland.
Yeah, I'm just going back to what I said before, and that is just steps. I think Rich had a really good point, and that is just regardless of the language, move forward with a response on the resolution. I think that should be our next step. And as far as the letter is concerned, I agree with Commissioner Kenny, and that is to see which way the election goes. It's coming one way or the other. Timing, whether it's now or whenever, in 30 days or 60 days really doesn't matter. Bad news doesn't get better with age, right? So we just need to, I think, as Commissioner Kenny said, find out who the players are. This step here, in terms of responding to the resolution, is just procedural. It's kindness. It's in reaction to, and then eventually we'll give them the information. But it's not going to be a year from now. It's going to be months from now. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Vice Chair Rowland.
Yeah, and I would say that I don't think any one of the commissioners sitting thinks that this should go on much longer. If we were using termination as some sort of a poker chip to try to force their hand, because our deadline was August 2025, so that we could do, it's too late. If we started the clock now and they drug their feet all the way to the end, we'd have to go to ballot before they were, on board. And, that's just the reality of time constraints. I think we're much better shape being constructive. And I think that, yeah, I think we've got a good relationship. There's no reason to be trying to push anything right now. But at the same time, in a couple months, we'll have that conversation, and we'll have that conversation with them so that we all feel part of the decision, just like Briar did, just like Mountlake Terrace did. I don't think at any point we had such frank discussions about, even the specter of sending termination letters ahead of things with either of those two cities. We want to work with our contract cities. We want to, cross the finish line together, not pushing them across the line. So yeah, I don't think the time is right.
I see Commissioner Lawrence. Vice Chair Rowland, as I understand it, a soft notice was sent to Briar, I believe is what you said in advance. And Chief Eastman, was a similar letter sent to Mountlake Terrace? A soft 2-year notice?
It was a year ahead, and it was and it's different because just to put it in context, the Mountlake Terrace and Briar contracts were expiring, right? And so when we sent them the 3-year, we said, hey, your contracts, 3 years from expiring. We've had a lot of conversations about the contract and the terms. And so just so you know, we're not, the board's not interested, and I don't remember exactly how the letter was written, is not interested in continuing the contract in its current state. We're letting you know that now. So the context of the 3-year letter up front was different with Briar and Mountlake Terrace because we were within 3 years of the original 20-year term expiring. So the letter that Chief sent said, hey, just so you know, the board's not interested in continuing the current terms, which means we need to renegotiate the terms of your agreement to deal with the parity issue, right? So in the context of where we are with the city of Edmonds, their agreement goes for 6 more years. So the context is different as a result of the length of what's remaining. It actually worked out very well with Briar and Mountlake Terrace because it was 3 years, right? And it was very clear from the board where we were going to go, and we weren't going to extend those in the current terms. And Thad sent something to the city manager and the mayor, respectively, saying, hey, so the board's been having a lot of conversations and this isn't going to continue like it is. I'm letting you know that now, which then led to further conversations. So yes, we did, but understand the context we did it is very different than where we are with the city of Edmonds right now, because we got 6 years left on the term. So I think it's important to understand all that was associated with those letters going forward right? It was very different because we knew endgame. For us to do that today is very different with Edmonds because their contract goes, it's not the same animal. It's not the same thing, at least from my perspective. Very different with us being able to do that from a staff's perspective to the mayor and to the city manager saying, hey, so you know, they're not entertaining it. And that was germane to the conversations we've had. And it spurred conversation to say, oh, okay. And then things happen. So yes, but I need to make sure I give you the caveats associated with it because Edmonds, it's different with Edmonds because of where we are within the current initial 20-year deal.
Right, we're 6 years out, not 3.
I guess I'll close by just saying that,
My turn.
if and when we.
Your next, Commissioner
we
Lawrence.
Send, any sort of termination, I think we drive for consensus on some things it's okay to have just a slim majority vote. I think for something that's serious, we want to have consensus as best we can, and it would be more powerful if it was signed by the entire board, if and when we get to that point, than a simple majority or something like that. If the message needs to be loud and clear, that I think that would be the loudest and clearest message. But again, we're not there right now, but we'll see where we're at in a couple months.
Thank you, Vice Chair Rowland. Commissioner Lawrence.
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of confused now. I thought your motion was just to say, it's not to give them 2-year notice, but to say it's coming. Right?
Right. Correct.
We're not arguing about 2-year notice. So it's a very benign, very soft letter. But going on with Paula, the liaison from Briars, it doesn't mean anything if we don't let them know. So respond as we should, like David Chan said earlier. This is what we do. We need to do it. We need to respond to their thing with saying, yeah, we'd like you to be an RFA. Just let you know, part of this is going to be involved with 2-year notice, which will be coming soon. So just a nice, polite, we're not sending him a 2-year notice, folks. You went and babbled on and on about it. We're not sending him a 2-year notice. We're just telling him it's going to be coming. Okay.
And something that they've heard many times over. Commissioner Chan, thank you. You haven't been given the floor yet. So Attorney Davis, quick question for you. Had it conform to RCW 52.26.300, would that trigger a 2-year notice on their behalf? Or no?
No, it would not. Yeah, the two things are independent.
Okay, thank you. All right, Commissioner Lawrence, your hand is still up. Okay, thank you. Commissioner Chan, you wanted to speak.
So
Is your mic on?
first of all, I completely agree with Mike say we eventually come to consensus. I don't see there's a big rush to do this, but you can send a letter, say thank you. Possibly there's no mention about 2 years notice and all that stuff. Right? Just say, hey, we're accepted, or let the staff kind of soft spoken there. There's no, okay, I gotta warn people. On Briar, there's a campaign saying that vote no, because you will say 1.2 million, somebody calculate out. And someone will do that. Okay, so you don't, I compare with Commissioner Kennedy. That's way into it's not too, we're not big rush, 30 days probably from now. We probably know right on the day of the election. Maybe there's some tight, but still it's not going to drag on forever. So I think that's the rest of the commission feel. But if you push the motion right now, I will vote no, and that's not a good sign. Commissioner Kennedy is not going to vote no, and you don't want to do that. Let's always come to consensus, and then we move on.
All right. As I understand it, they've been told for the last 4 years-ish that there's going to be a 2-year notification coming eventually.
But it doesn't matter. I mean, they will know the last 2 years. I have dealt with Edmonds quite a bit, okay, and I have the experience from them. So just let you know.
Mr. Chair,
Vice Chair Rowland.
I would move the previous question. We go to a vote. I make a motion that we go to a vote. We don't have to vote to go to a vote, but
Hand was up, we're still on discussion.
it's almost 11 o'clock and we still have
Yeah.
another agenda item, so.
Right.
Table it.
So, okay, so Commissioner Lawrence, you have your hand up, and then we'll go to a vote.
That you, I'm just, counting votes here already. I think you need to withdraw the motion. I'll withdraw my second. That we don't need
Okay.
to.
All right, so the second has been withdrawn for the motion, and therefore I don't,
Technically, it's not allowed under our bylaws as they currently are passed. We have
Okay.
to go to a vote. We could just do a motion to postpone indefinitely.
Yeah.
Majority passes it and it's basically tabled.
okay, motion to postpone indefinitely.
Works for me.
Seconded by Commissioner Lawrence. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. All right, has it. Now we're going on
Well,
to,
so can I just want to make sure I know what staff's supposed to do.
Right.
So no, so what
Please
my
continue to
understanding is
work
we're gonna
with-
send a letter that Chair Daniels will sign. So nope, you don't want Chair you want,
Positive, collaborative, excited to be working with you.
right, acknowledge their resolution and that we'll continue to work with you.
so you want that to be signed by me or do you want it to be signed by the board? The chair, the letter, we're gonna say the collaboration letter. Thank you. It's,
I'd be happy to sign.
I'm asking how the board would like it to be done.
I just write it, you sign it. Let me have it for a second. Put a PS on the bottom. Okay.
So I just want to know how the board wants it done. If it's
In the
gonna be a
interest-
signature for me or a signature from Chair Daniels.
If we do it from the board, my suggestion is that in the interest of time and expediency, that we just have the signature from the chair.
Is
Yep.
that
Just say thank
Fine.
you.
Yeah.
the will is to come from the board? So we'll draft what we had talked about in the context of the conversation. Leslie, I think we have kind of a draft letter already in play. We'll get that finished up and get it to Melissa for chair to sign and then figure out how to get it to the city.
I'll look forward to it in the coming days.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Committee updates, Finance Committee with Commissioner Chan.
I'm thinking about we have a meeting for next week.
Okay, they have a meeting
Okay.
coming up. All right. Intergovernmental with Commissioner Furnoff.
Yeah, we met last week and we talked about everything we just talked about.
All right, thank you. Snow 911, we have a meeting coming up here in 2 weeks from Thursday. So, and then next week we'll have a Finance Committee meeting, so I don't have anything to report at this time. Commissioner comments,
Yes.
Commissioner Lawrence and then Commissioner Chan.
We have the Snow Isle Commissioners meeting and would encourage our members, our board members and whatever staff has got nothing better to do to show up on Thursday night.
Thank
So-
you. With that, Commissioner Kenny, with you being on the treasurer of the Snow Isle, do you know what the topic is going to be for Thursday night's meeting?
I don't recall.
Nurse
who
navigator line.
guessed.
Oh, Nurse Navigator line?
It's a nurse navigator line. So
Oh, that's
the
right.
chiefs,
Yeah.
the chiefs approved it and I think Terry Peterson, I don't know if Chief Hughes will be there. And I don't recall if Chief Waller will be there, but they're gonna give a brief on the nurse navigator line.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Chan, you had comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for the CERT meeting. Two of my board member of Asian Works Information Center, I attend that, and I did went by and say thank you, because I think this is really important, the CERT, and I emphasizing that during the disaster situation, they're the one who need to take care of it, so I really appreciate that. And also I am going on a trip, which I usually do, but starting November 1. But I will try to attend the meeting by Zoom, so as much as I can. So I will be gone about a month and a half. So just give you a warning. All right.
Thank you. On to executive session, review the performance of a public employee pursuant to RCW 42.30 sub 1 sub G as in George, and we'll do that until 11:10 with no action to follow. Yeah. I call the meeting back to order and I adjourn at 11:10.